minutes or?
We have a quorum, so it's up to you, Chair, if you would like to begin, or we can wait a few minutes.
Let's see who's on. Jeff. Yeah, because I don't know who we're expecting and not expecting. So why don't we go ahead and get going then? Okay, so my name is Kate Corman Super, and I'd like to welcome you to the regular meeting of the Recreation and Parks Commission. Let's see here. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And then can I get a roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Encontres?
Present.
Commissioner Mccauley?
Here.
Commissioner Rowe?
Jeff is here.
Commissioner Lang?
Here.
Chair Super?
Here.
And then noting the absence, I don't see Commissioners Barbara Rigos and Commissioner Alameda.
Okay. And then I will, who did I call on last time? I don't remember, but I will call on Commissioner Lang. Can you please lead us in the salute to the flag, please?
Yes, I did this last time.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 meetings ago. So I just it's just the pledge, right?
I did the pledge, yeah.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all. All right.
Thank you. And now, let's see, can I get, well, let's see here. Order of the agenda. Am I allowed, this is one that I should have emailed this question in advance. Am I allowed to make a motion to reorder the agenda or a couple items on the consent calendar myself, or does somebody else have to make that motion?
No, you can certainly make that motion.
Okay.
Is it specifically on the consent calendar, or is it the items for discussion? Because the consent calendar, you can pull the items. The order doesn't necessarily matter unless you pull more than one.
I just want to switch the J1 and J2. I want to flip-flop J1 and J2.
Okay. So yeah, so you can make that motion and see if the commission agrees with that recommendation.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to flip J1 and J2. My reasoning is that I just feel like J2 may be a very lively discussion. And I just, for the purposes of like continuity of the meeting, I just think maybe potential new officers taking over would be better suited for after that discussion item. So I'm just wondering if maybe somebody would second that. That'd be
I'll second that.
So are there any, and now I need, what do I do now? I say, I've never done this before, actually. So I say, I have to go through and say if everybody agrees with that, right?
Sure. If you'd like, I can do the roll call vote.
That would be awesome if you could.
Okay.
Do that. Yeah.
Sure. No problem. Commissioner Encontres?
Agree.
Commissioner Mccauley?
Yes.
Commissioner Rowe?
Agree.
Commissioner Lang?
Agree.
And Chair Super?
Aye. Agreed. Okay, guys, thank you. Okay, so we're moving right along. I know, so I'd like to then make a motion to, I guess, approve the order of agenda now, or we already just did that, right? Or
yeah.
Okay. All right. So moving along. So I'd like to make a motion now to, or can I have a motion rather to accept the blue folder item that we were sent?
Make a motion to accept the blue folder item.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Great. And then, so the consent calendar, we've already done that, correct? As well, or do I need a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Yeah, we do need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, so can I then get a motion to approve the consent calendar, please?
Motion to approve? The consent
Second.
calendar.
Okay. All right, and then I do want to do a motion to approve the minutes, to file and receive the minutes from the October 13th, 2021 meeting. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And then I think we're moving right along to H, which is public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on this agenda for action. This section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Do we have any public participation items?
We don't have any at this time.
Oh, okay. All right. And then...
I'm sorry, we have 2 people that have raised their hands.
Oh.
Give me 1 second. We have Mark Hansen. Mark, you will have 3 minutes.
Do I need to unmute him, or is that?
No, I will take care of that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mark, you can start now.
Great. Hi, Commissioners. This is Mark Hansen from King Harbor Yacht Club. I just want to invite you in the community to come enjoy our 29th annual holiday boat parade coming up on Saturday, December 11th. There's great viewing all along the inner breakwater of the harbor. So hope you guys all come down and enjoy this wonderful family entertainment event. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Great.
And we have Barbara Epstein. Barbara, you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. I've got Jack's picture on my screen by accident, but it's me, Barbara. And all I want to say is I've had a kind of a struggle. I wanted to donate a memorial bench for my friend, Lillian Light, who's a wonderful nature educator who did a lot of work in Wilderness Park back in the day. So I wanted to donate a bench, but I'm having trouble finding the exact right design. And so recently, our friend from South Bay Parkland Conservancy has passed away, and I know that SBPC also wants to donate a bench for Bill Pettit. So I was thinking maybe we should choose one beautiful rustic design for future donations of benches. And so I wanted to run that by Recreation and Parks just to get your opinion on that. So I just want to bring up that topic in case you feel that it's important.
Thanks, Barb.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, this is something I think I know I've been reaching out to the city about. So thanks for coming and speaking. It reminds me to follow up with Sonica. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other public participation?
There are no other comments at this moment.
Thank you. Okay. And then do we have any items continued from previous agendas or items for discussion prior to action?
We do not.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. So then we will then go ahead and move along to then J2, which is discussion of elements to be included in a tree ordinance.
So thank you, Chair. So I'm actually going to turn this on over to a representative from our Public Works Department. So we have Rob Osborne is going to be providing the staff report for this item.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. So again, good evening, Commissioners. Rob Osborne, Public Works Department. So I'm here tonight at the City Council's direction to get the Commission's input on a couple of specific items related to a tree ordinance that we're developing. So let's start off with a little bit of the background. So a few months back, the Council started receiving some complaints that there was concern that some trees primarily located in the Parkway strips in front of properties were being cut down. This is something that we do monitor, but there are concerns that it's gotten a bit out of control. So suggested that we develop a tree ordinance specifically to govern these issues with trees and protect them from being removed. As far as the chronology, back in April, the Council officially directed staff to start developing an ordinance. We went back to the Council in August, a couple months back, and what we did was two of our residents, one of which is Commissioner Lang, developed their own ordinance for us to consider as sort of a starting point. So we took that to the City Council. There was some discussion, and the Council concluded by directing us to take the several issues to the three commissions, the Recreation and Parks, the Planning Commission, and also the Public Works Commission for specific input on 4 different areas that could be included in a tree ordinance. So what I'll do is I'll walk through the 4, talk about a little bit about where we currently are, what's proposed. The first one is establishing some type of classification for protected trees. The draft ordinance calls them heritage trees. These would be trees with some certain unique size or characteristics, unique species or age, some type of historical significance, relevant to some event or something significant in the city's history. So our current practices, we don't have any current designation like that. The Public Works Department strives to protect all trees on city property. We already look at these types of these categories or characteristics such as age and species for anything unique, and we consider that in making decisions when we're asked to remove a street tree. So our recommendation is that we're not sure that it's necessary to have this official designation. There's already really sort of an unofficial review, and we take a look at all issues with trees before they're removed. Moving on, the next area, and this one is for time. This is related to construction. When properties are developed, often trees out in the Parkway strips are located in an area that the property owner wants to use for driveway access. For example, an older house with a narrow driveway, the owner might want to expand it to a larger garage, larger driveway, and sometimes a tree is in the way. So the draft ordinance recommends that prohibiting removal of trees, with only exceptions for certain situations where appeals would be considered by the Planning Commission for a final decision. Current practice, as I mentioned, we avoid removing trees if at all possible. This is something we already do. So when plans come in, we take a look. If there's a request to remove a tree, we evaluate it case-by-case basis, and we don't approve requests unless there really are no feasible alternatives. For example, if a tree, if a driveway could be located a foot or so one way or the other and maintain the tree, we'll deny the request and make the owner find some other way around it. So our recommendation in this area is to maintain the current practice. We think it's important to keep some flexibility. As much as we want to preserve all the trees that we can, there are some times when a property really just can't be developed. If there's a large tree right in the middle where logically any driveway, any garage would go, to have a blanket policy of not allowing removal, we think it's kind of restricts what the owners can do a little bit too much. So we like to have that flexibility. Moving on to the third area, this is something we've not done before. The proposed ordinance seeks to protect certain trees on private property. So right now, throughout the city's history, to my knowledge, we've only ever governed trees in the public right-of-way, either parkway strips, in parks, city facilities. The ordinance proposes that we restrict removal of trees also from private property, and that appeals or requests to remove a tree would have to go before the Planning Commission for approval. Current practice, as I stated, this is not something the city has ever regulated. Again, we've only ever focused on trees on public property. Staff's recommendation is be very hesitant to get into restricting what people can do with trees on their own property. Never been done before. It gets into infringing on property rights. Could potentially be very controversial if we start putting those restrictions. So staff recommendation is to not get into private property governing of trees. Final area for the Commission's consideration is developing two lists, one for approved species of trees. This would be trees that we found that do well in this type of climate. The size, the species does well in our beach climate. And also develop a list of prohibited trees, obviously ones that don't do so well or would tend to outgrow their environment, cause problems with droppings and with damaging sidewalks. Current practice is we do have a list of recommended trees. I believe it was included in your report package. We've got a brochure with 18 different species of trees that we have found do really well in the beach climate. They fit well into parkway strips. It's not to say that we don't ever allow trees other than these 18, but these are the ones we recommend. If somebody is interested in having a tree planted in front of their house of a different species, we take a look at it on a case-by-case basis and make the determination on whether it's an appropriate fit for the location. Staff's recommendation is to maintain the current list. We think it's a pretty good one. I'm not sure we need to get into a prohibited list. The process that's in place, somebody can request a tree. If we don't think it's a good fit, we won't approve it. If somebody comes up with a tree that's not on our list that we think is a good fit, then we'll go ahead and approve it. So that's the staff recommendation. As far as overall, recommendation is for the commission to go through these 4 areas for discussion and provide inputs for the city council's consideration. That concludes the staff report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that. That was very thorough and helpful. Is there another element of the presentation?
Nope. No, again, the council's specific direction was for the commission to look at these 4 elements and to provide general input so that input can be considered when the council ultimately puts together the ordinance.
Okay. Let's see. Do we have any questions from commission? Let's see here. Let me look at hands. I don't know who was up first, so I will just see. I will just call on Commissioner Mccauley.
I'll defer to Commissioner Lang. Ladies first, go ahead.
I didn't know if it was clear based on the agenda, but Laura and I also have a short presentation to speak to after questions for Rob are completed.
Okay, great. Okay, so then let's just go to the questions we have here first then. So Commissioner Mccauley.
Rob, thank you for the presentation and for bringing us up to speed on this and what we need to do. First question is, the city has an arborist, is that correct?
We do. We were hoping he'd be here to join us tonight, but he's not available, so I apologize for that. We do have an in-house arborist. He's our Parks and Urban Forestry Manager is his title. So he oversees all of our maintenance operations, but in addition to that, he is an expert on trees and has the arborist certification.
And so my question would be, is he in agreement with these recommendations where it says city staff, he's been consulted?
Yes, this is our Public Works Department's recommendations, including him.
Okay, thank you.
Chairperson Super, I just
yeah.
wanted to introduce myself. I'm Ted Saman. I'm the Public Works Director for the city, and I'm also here to answer any questions you may have regarding this item tonight.
Oh, thank you. Okay, great. So let's go to, I'll save my questions for the end. So let's go to Commissioner Rowe.
Hey, how you doing? Question, just roughly, you mentioned there were some incidents or reports. How many inquiries per year in a tree that has been taken down or not taken down? Is it once a week or once a month?
Honestly, in Public Works, we get very few. Once every couple months, to the best of my knowledge, on average for the last few years.
Okay, yeah, I had no idea. And I know this guy, you probably know Mike Garcia. Was he consulted or did we need his input being kind of the area? I know he's got his own business. Was he involved at all in this?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Mr. Garcia.
I am Chairperson Rowe, not Chairperson, but Commissioner Rowe.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with Mike, and we've talked on multiple occasions. I don't recall him being present when we went to the city council during the presentation and conversations, but we've spoken with Mike on multiple occasions, not necessarily related to this, but he's got our contact information and we're happy to receive any input he may have.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just know the guy and he lives a mile from me. I thought I'd just throw his name in there, but I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Escontrias. Gil?
Okay, I'm sorry. I do have a couple questions though. Is your presentation based on you're asking us to look at element 1, 2, and 3 and kind of have a consensus of what our opinion is of that? Is that what you're looking for tonight?
Yes, the council has specifically asked for input from the commission on the 4 items that I went through.
So then it would be more of along the lines of do we do as a group as to which of the 3 that would be preferential as a commission?
Well, we want you to look at all 4 items. They're not...
Or 4, right.
Yeah.
Of the 4. And then come a consensus of the 4 as a group. Is that what you're asking for?
If there was a consensus, that would certainly be the best case. If there was some disagreement, we could certainly pass along all the different opinions, but we'd love it if there were a consensus on the items.
Yeah,
okay.
And Commissioner Escontrias, we're looking for your input, not necessarily that you have to have consensus on all these items, but we're really seeking the input of the commission to be able to take that back to the council for their consideration when the time comes.
Okay. My question would be, are there any other studies that were conducted either by the state or even by the county or anything else concerning this type of ordinance that you're aware of, or audits that were conducted?
None that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, okay. And I'm not aware of that either from their perspective. I think it's the different cities. We know the city of Manhattan Beach has an ordinance, that ordinance was amended not too long ago to include private property. The model ordinance that Commissioner Lang had provided at the time was from the city of Encinitas, if I recall correct. So it varies from city to city. It is not necessarily something that's a statewide or countywide from that perspective.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a perspective of determining whether or not somebody else has something similar in our area and whether or not we're just either duplicating effort or we're contradicting them. That's it. My other question would be, does the current ordinance now have any type of written concerns about trees, whether city or otherwise, that can be removed based on causing damage, say to the, for example, the sidewalks and things like that? Or is it something more along the lines of the arborist's opinion as to whether or not the tree should stay or go?
Rob, you want me to handle that one?
Yeah. When we're asked to take out a tree, our arborist goes out and he looks at a number of things. The health of the tree is one of the main things, but he also does look at has a tree outgrown its environment to the point where the roots are going to, eternally disturb the sidewalk and possibly create a trip hazard. That is definitely something we look at, but one of only several factors.
Okay, but is there somewhere in the ordinance that kind of says these are the factors that may be determined, and based on that, that is why a tree can be removed? My concern is that if it's not written down, sometimes it goes back to just opinion. And I think sometimes I'm seeing a lot more on Nextdoor of people very concerned about trees being removed from their communities, and not understanding as to the hows and whys of the ordinance or the removal of that particular tree. So that's one of my concerns.
Commissioner Escontrias,
yes,
let me help with that a little bit. There's a multitude of variables. That's why it's difficult to say these are the check marks that you would want to play us out here. The trees themselves, they vary in terms of their root structure, the type of root system that they have. Some have surface roots, some have tap roots, some have a variation of roots, some have potential disease that our arborists will look at. Sometimes it is damage from either a contractor or a resident or somebody else that has caused damage that may be irreparable. So what we're looking for are obviously safety issues. If we believe that it's causing safety issues, as Rob said, from a trip hazard, safety issues from a limb and or a tree that may be in jeopardy of falling at some stage. There's a multitude of them. And, Alberto, our arborist, is a certified arborist. He's using his expertise and years of experience to make these judgments. It is not just an arbitrary thing. A lot of times people may not understand why a tree is being recommended for removal. And we're obviously happy to explain that further, but there's a multitude of variables. It is not a simple, here's 10 checklist items that we can check off and determine whether it's a yes or a no for that.
Okay. Well, I'm referring to checklists sometimes can be very general as well, and not just kind of like because I said so type of deal. I get that because we've had, in fact, one report previously where someone said, well, I'm an expert in this area and this is what I determined. And then come to find out that person never really did that audit. And now suddenly, so there's a difference in that. And the other factor I'm looking at as well is documentation as to opinions and such, so that it's written somewhere, so that if somebody has a concern, that they can go back to something that is documented and not just, anecdotal, if you will. I would say for myself, in closing, that I'm not too big fan of the city coming on to a private property and determining a little bit more of the trees on there, unless there's a safety factor or else like that, and then start determining what trees can go in there, and especially when we start encroaching on private property. But I'm kind of on the fence with that, understanding that because again, it's going to be a little bit more of public opinion as to what can go on in other people's property. But, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Gil. I'm just wondering if at this point I see another hand. I'm just wondering if at this point because I have a lot of questions, but I feel like my questions are more directed toward what's actually written in the in what is actually written by Commissioner Lang and the co-author. I forgot her name, Laura, I think. So I'm just wondering if maybe we should get that presentation now and then hold off on other questions until we get that information as well. Does that make sense?
I can hold my questions until after that. That's fine.
Okay. All right. So Commissioner Lang, why don't you go ahead and sort of add your piece, and then okay. I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion and questions generated after that piece.
Okay, great. Do you mind if I share my screen then?
No, I don't know that I control that, but
I can. I just wanted to ask.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So this is our, it's like a very quick presentation we drafted last week before we had to submit it to be included as a blue folder item. So our tree ordinance is much longer than this, but we are just in this presentation, we're only referencing the items that that were brought up in the staff report. So I'm not sure how many of you were able to read this before the meeting tonight, but it does have some background information on Laura and myself. And just really quick, we both came up, I'll talk about myself mostly. I came to the tree issue. I've been a Redondo Beach resident for probably 13 to 14 years. And I really started to notice the trees and take note of the tree situation in my neighborhood. I live in South Redondo, so we do have the Parkway. And so I saw a lot of inconsistency in, especially on Avenue C, that really drew my attention. And there were some trees on the street. Anyways, I don't want to drag on, but and I did you guys happen to read this? Because I think that some of this is important, but I don't want to go over,
Oh, I read all of it.
Oh, you can. Okay, great. So someone asked, like, what was the ordinance that we have now say? And we don't actually have an ordinance. We have a policy and procedure section in, I guess, I don't know if it would be considered the city code. And so there's a lot of discretionary decisions with the policy and procedures. And so someone also asked the Public Works Department, how many calls a week do you get from residents concerned with a tree that's being cut down? And so I wanted to speak to that because as a resident that's called on trees that were being sort of cut down or planned for removal, I did not know who to contact. So oftentimes I would start with my city council member, and then they would tell me to contact, maybe the planning department. So I would talk to someone in the planning department or send an email that didn't get responded to. And then I would reach out to Public Works, and actually Public Works was pretty responsive to me. And that's where I got most of my questions. But some of the issues that arose were that the tree removal was approved because of planning documents that were coming through the planning department that were approved without first going to the arborist. And Ted can say, well, that's not the process, but I'm just giving you my experience as a resident trying to get answers. So it was unclear to me. Just moving along. And then there is tree removal without replacement, which happens really often. Even though the Public Works Department, that they want, if a tree is removed, they want to plant one in its place, but that doesn't always happen. So if we had an ordinance, like a clear ordinance, that would help with that issue as well. And there's just some stats here. There's 2,282 empty Parkway spaces in Redondo Beach. And so why Laura and I are really here are for these bulleted reasons. We are really concerned about counteracting the heat island effect. Expanding our canopy is going to be one of the primary ways that we can protect ourselves from increased temperatures. And not only that, but it provides wildlife habitat, which we actually have quite a bit here in Redondo Beach. I was just contacted by someone with the Monarch Butterfly organization. And anyways, he was saying actually the monarchs in Redondo Beach are doing really well. So I do think it's important for us to recognize our obligation to our urban wildlife. It reduces noise, it's crime reduction, it increases home values, and it just makes more comfortable outdoor recreation. So this is just some current conditions. So and these are numbers that might not be 100% accurate, but I did get some of this stuff from the city. So in the 2020-21 calendar year, they planted 102 trees, but 43 were removed. So that was a total net of 58 new trees. And at this rate, it would take 40 years to fill our empty planters in the city. So moving along to the heritage tree ordinance point that the city touched on. So I don't have to read this, but what I wanted to point out is that an ordinance would take the guessing work out of is a tree protected or is it not protected? And if a tree is protected and it still needs to be removed, it doesn't, and there's discussion about it being removed, it doesn't mean it can't be removed. It's just going to have to go through standard protocols to get that tree removed and make sure that multiple departments are on board with that, be it planning commission. So that this is actually something that we are still standing behind, prohibiting restricting unfettered removal of parkway trees to provide driveway access to private property as part of construction projects. So this photo that you're actually seeing here, so this was a home under construction, and there's a tree. You can kind of see it. It's hard. It might be difficult to know what you're looking at. So they repaved the driveway there, and there was a plan to remove this tree. And and this is one of the ones where I called on it quite a few times. And ultimately I was told that the tree was going to be removed, but it wasn't removed. And it seems to be doing fine. I'm not an arborist, but I was really thankful to see that they were able to work around and figure out a solution to keep that tree, because as you can see, it kind of adds to the character and canopy of that street. And this is on Avenue A. So, and this section of the ordinance would establish a clear process for planning, building and safety, and public works to work together towards the shared goal of preserving mature trees with design adjustments and follow through. So what this means is, with the follow through especially, is if a tree is removed, then we would know that one was in the plan to get planted before the new home was signed off on for occupancy. So this is another picture example, and this is just to highlight sort of the discretionary sort of inconsistency. And again, there's a lot of details here that I might not be privy to, but as a resident, I'm showing up as a resident and not a staff. So as you can see, there was this tree removed, and it was a pretty mature tree. This driveway was expanded. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there's plenty of space for a tree to be planted. And under the policies and procedures of the city, one should have been planted actually at the cost of the owner upon the removal of this tree. And one was never put in. And actually, the tree, I was told that the root ball would have been compromised if the tree was left in this location. It appeared to me that we may have been able to preserve it. And I'm actually wondering at what point, the city would say, okay, we're going to leave this mature tree here. The driveway, we're not going to be paving over the tree. There's space for it. We're going to keep an eye on it to make sure that, it's not suffering from, any damage because of the widening of this driveway. But these are all things that that an ordinance would take into consideration. And so moving along, the prohibiting removal of protected heritage trees located in front, rear, and side yard setbacks on private property. So this is actually something that I would really like, that I want input on. I think it's really important to get input from the community. So just as an example, so when we think of like private property, right, it all kind of is concerning because we don't want the city to tell us what we can and can't do on our property. However, in North Redondo, new construction is required to put a tree in the front yard to be signed off on. However, if the owner wants to turn around and remove the tree after they have their sort of occupancy, there's nothing there to prohibit them from doing that. In Manhattan Beach, in their tree section, they also lack city parkway space. And so to preserve the tree canopy in that area, they established an ordinance that took into consideration preserving those trees, not just, for the benefit of the homeowner, but for the entire community and neighborhood. And so they have specific requirements about when you can remove a tree and when you can't, and there's a permitting process. And so it makes sense that because we already have that requirement in terms of construction, that we would somehow be able to preserve that tree if the owner wanted to remove it. So you guys can read through this if you want at some point, but that's the gist of it. And so these are just a few photo examples of trees that were removed on private property. So on the left-hand side, you have a home in South Redondo. So this means that there's in this case, there's City Parkway in front of it. And you can see that the tree has been removed. It was a huge tree. So I can understand that severely limits possibilities of construction. But then on the right, you actually have the case where the home was built and then the tree was planted. And this is in North Redondo. You'll notice there's no City Parkway space. So, and the note that follows is actually from someone on the block who sent this letter. And again, they sent it to the mayor because they didn't send it to, I don't know if it eventually trickled down to Public Works, but I think the city council people are the ones on the forefront of getting the notes about trees being removed. So this woman was really upset to see this tree come down. And it makes sense that people in North Redondo feel almost powerless because they don't have the City Parkway. And so it feels as though they shouldn't miss out on the benefits of canopy cover because the only place to plant trees is and I think it is the front setback. So they're not going to be able to build a house in that space anyways. Okay. And then this is the last thing. This is about the species list. And so I think, Alberto, Alberto is the arborist, and I've spoken to him on numerous occasions about all these issues. And, he's great. He works really hard. A lot of cities, I just wanted to point out, have some of these cities with these established tree programs, and perhaps they're funded a little bit better than, our Public Works tree specific pot. But I just wanted to say that he not only is he our arborist, but he does do maintenance. And so some of these other arborists, that is their sole job, is just to manage trees and maybe landscaping throughout the city. So Alberto does deal with challenges that maybe some of these other cities do not. So the whole point of this part in the ordinance was that, as you can see, this is a very inconsistent look. So olive trees, although they may serve the benefit of variety, and the whole point of there being a variety of tree species is because if there was a disease that swept through, they would not, and was attacking, say, olive trees specifically, they wouldn't wipe out the whole city or a whole block. So we recognize that variety is important. However, I think that there's an opportunity here to create some consistency with the tree profile and similar canopy cover to create a beautiful aesthetic. And so as you can see here, there's palm trees, there's pine trees, there's these olive trees that don't really serve any sort of, they don't provide much canopy cover. So, and then just to scroll down a little bit, here are some pictures of consistency and how that sort of beautifies the neighborhood. Even I put palm trees in here, which they're actually a part of the corn family. So when you see a tree come out and a palm tree go in, it's actually not capturing carbon in the same way. And and you'll see that actually happen quite a bit. So that sort of concludes our review. And, I didn't give Laura a chance to speak, so I just wanted to see if that's okay, if she had anything to, any input.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And then let me see, I'll stop sharing this. And then.
Is she on the call?
She is. Yeah, okay. She's under the attendees and her hand is up. I'm sorry, Laura.
Give me 1 second. I'll put her through.
Okay.
Go ahead, Laura. Laura, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, commissioners. Thank you so much, staff, for your efforts in moving this ordinance forward. And if it's possible, could I share a screen? I'm going to elaborate a little on what Mara said, but my comments tonight are probably 3 to 5, maybe 6 minutes. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, great. Let me start. Am I able to share a screen?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
While Laura is getting her screen ready, I just wanted to add one short thing. So someone inquired about Mike Garcia as like a local expert in, all things sort of landscaping, trees and all that. So a lot of cities that are Tree Cities USA, which the council moved to work towards that designation, one of the requirements is to have a tree canopy committee, and that consists of residents or people that are experts in the field, and they just kind of come together to discuss certain tree issues in the area. And they would, Mike Garcia would be someone who would be on a committee like that and offer input as a resident and a professional in the in that field. And Mike actually came to the city council quite a few times and spoke on the need for a tree ordinance. So I just wanted to say that.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Mara. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And can you see my screen? No.
No.
Well, let me speak to this. I am a city planner, and I am in a local jurisdiction. I work for the city of Lomita, and in the South Bay, there are only 2 municipalities that do not have a tree ordinance. One is Hawthorne, the second is Redondo Beach. We have mentions of trees in our code. Most are very nominal. They do not at all reflect any sort of binding official requirements on the part of property owners, and nor do they establish a community ethos. We haven't had that vetting of what are our feelings towards our trees in public and on private space. I do want to speak to the comment about private property and encroaching in people's rights. I think where Mara really did hit a home run was discussing any sort of heritage designation would already be in a setback area. We're not looking to restrict the buildable footprint of anything. A heritage tree was defined at a recent AP, American Planning Association conference, as anything with a circumference of over 100 inches. So this is something substantial. The next thing on the heritage tree, but we also affect private property rights. I'm in planning every single day through how big you can build, how small you can build, what's your land use, and other impacts. So my impetus for getting this tree ordinance really started from a recreational element. And that was because when I was walking in the morning, life was good. If I was walking midday, it was oppressive, because you could go half a block or more in full blast sun. And this is why it's so appropriate that we're starting here tonight with recreation, because our parkways are important to people's recreation, to their health, their welfare, their well-being. When it comes to the driveway issue, I appreciate staff's position that it is their policy, but unless you have something in the code that is binding, you're always going to either have pushback or you're not going to have the enforcement mechanism necessary. One of the reasons we wrote things the way we wrote it, and I will take ownership of this, is there's a new state law called SB 9. It's a housing law that allows subdivision by right. Now, unless we want to have tons of driveway aprons and no parkways, we need to be very prepared to realize that is a possibility. We could be looking at tall and skinny communities throughout our single family zones. And I know that Public Works doesn't really deal in SB 9 because it's a housing bill, but it is truly a possibility that a lot can be split in half by right. And then what are we doing? We're giving them a curb cut in order to access it for their off-street parking. So what our proposal entails is a very specific response that restricts the size of that. And I know staff's, again, intentions are good, but 12 years ago when we remodeled our house and added on, we changed the driveway configuration, and removing a new or an old tree and replacing it with a new is not as good. In hindsight, I wish our architect and I wish I took more care and did a better job at fixing our design, because it could have gone the other way. Private property, I'll go to the species list. Redondo has a species list of 18 trees, and I've looked them up to a degree and compared them with Lomita's. Lomita has over 35. And I think it's important that we have enough diversity to ward off any sort of disease that may come through. I'm a Midwesterner. So back in the 70s, Dutch elm was a big issue. Dutch elm wiped out all the trees on my parents' property. And that could be this, you don't want to see the city have that kind of same response. And a species list of 18 is a great starting point because a lot of them line up one for one with what we have in Lomita. But you need more diversity. You need nothing more than 5% is the recommendation of your tree pool. So those are the issues that staff has covered tonight. I guess what I want to say is it's a conversation. It's a conversation between the commissions, the community, the council, and staff as to how to implement to the best manner possible. And there's a private side, there's a public side. And staff knows how this city works and runs very well, and I respect them for the work that they do. But we need an ordinance because someday, Ted and Rob, they're not going to be here. And whoever takes their place should be bound by something. So with that, since I can't share my screen, I wanted to walk you through. Let me see if I can do this. A little study I did. Is this coming through?
No.
I'm so sorry. This was in your blue folder, and it was a District 5 Parkway sample survey and ordinance. The ordinance is potential. Kelly, I have my green button on share screen, but that's not.
It should prompt you to choose a screen that will show you. I think it might be working.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. Is it working now?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So I believe in empirical information, firsthand account, get and feel it, walk it, live it. So I went through 4 of Redondo's districts and did a tree sample survey to see how much was missing. As you heard, we are missing a tremendous amount of trees, over 2,000 trees in our public places. In District 5, it's a unique area. And Mara touched on some of the really important reasons why. Their right-of-ways are only 50. They have 50-foot lots, but they have a lot of the subdivision up there is without parkways. And so what does that mean? Fortunately, the municipal code addresses that, as we've discussed. And if there's new construction, then a tree has to be planted in an R1 zone lot. That is a fantastic regulation, and that is in the planning code. They do not have many streets that have a 60-foot right-of-way width, and that means they don't have a parkway. There are some opportunities up there for underplanted public non-park property. I've seen kind of surplus areas. And here's that section of code we were talking to about the front yard, the private property regulation that the city already has. So I walked down Robinson from Englewood to Vale, counted lot by lot what their parkway tree counts were. And this is a 60-foot right-of-way, and it has sidewalks, it has parkway. It is unusual in its design because the southerly parkway is narrower than the northerly parkway. But on both sides of the street, a substantial amount of trees are missing. Clearly on the southerly side, it's a higher percentage. Yet in our species list, if I could find it, we do have tree species that would fit the width of their parkway. And here's an example of it. I don't know if this is the tree species, but this is on the southerly parkway. You can see how narrow it is. But at this one property, trees are able to grow. They're actually able to grow and cast shade over the center line. So that is fantastic that we have the ability. It's just how do we get there? And part of it is what tools do we have to replant our public spaces. And one of the ideas that I'm proposing is that when there's a trigger, meaning there's construction, a building permit issued over a certain valuation, or even a sale, you get code compliance and you ensure that you're planting a new parkway tree. Because as Mara said, I don't think a 40-year span is acceptable to get to a place where we are finishing off that 2,282 empty planting area opportunity. Okay. So with that, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank staff again, and I'm going to wait if anyone has any questions. The letter I wrote covered a whole lot more of opportunities that we have to create a great ordinance for Redondo Beach. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation, guys. Like that was really awesome. And I know how much hard work goes into that. Former commissioner and I wrote an amendment to the municipal code on a different issue a couple years ago, and I know how much work it is. So I really, really appreciate this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to the hand that is raised right now. And then I think I'm going to lead in with my questions because I have a feeling that they'll cover a lot of the other commissioners' questions as well. But right now I'll just go to Commissioner Mccauley because he's had his hand raised for a while.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, ladies, for the presentation. I can see there's a lot of passion here and there's a lot of detail that was put into it, so I do appreciate that. And I would like to take the time to really look into this issue and have that discussion and go over. So I do have some comments and I have some questions. But first of all, I'd like to look at where we all kind of agree. Trees are great. We would love to continue to adding trees is good. It's a great idea to pursue. One interesting thing that stood out that I didn't think of before your presentation was about the canopy. You think plant the tree, but plant the right tree with the canopy, and I get that. And I think that's an important factor to be included into the conversation. I do think for sure we have some issues with the property rights versus the Parkway. I think the Parkway is clearly defined, and that's much more an area to start with to add trees in those areas, especially with the deficit of 2,000 trees identified throughout the city. I think there also is a deficit of North Redondo. North Redondo, the streets are more narrow. There's not the parkways. It's going to be a challenge to get more canopy over that area. I can see that being a major issue as well. The private property rights opens up a can of worms, I think, in a lot of ways, and I think I would be leery in that regard. Sometimes an ordinance isn't always the best for every situation, and so I'm not saying it's not in this situation. I'm just saying that's something to be mindful for. But some of the questions that I just kind of jotted down as we were going through for the city, for you, Ted, or for Rob, would it be safe to say that the city policy right now would be that we generally try to preserve and add trees at any opportunity in the city with our ordinances and with our city policies? Would that be
I
safe?
would say yes, as a policy. There are no ordinances in the public right of way. It is purely under the city's jurisdictional control. No private property owner has any right to plant, to modify, or do anything without the city's permission. And from the city's perspective of its maintenance, yes, absolutely. We not only have a directive from the city council to plant trees, on the average 100 trees per year, but that has been also a practice for us.
Right. I do have a specific question. I'm not sure who this would be for, but we do have water issues in California, and I know a lot of families are choosing to go to artificial turf for the front of their property, and in some cases, I think even on the parkways. And so there's kind of a dilemma there. Like if I don't have a tree and I put the fake grass, that means I don't need to irrigate. Therefore, I'm using less water. Is that addressed anywhere in the proposal? For a situation like that?
Yeah. So in the ordinance, we do discuss artificial turf primarily because it is just plastic, right. And it actually increases the ground
radiation or something. I imagine.
Yeah, by an incredible amount. I wish I had the stats on that so I could tell you, but yeah, and the other thing is it kind of breaks down in our case, we're really close to the ocean. And so, in the case of runoff or whatever, it just as more plastic particles ending up in the ocean. And so I think having creative ways to for people to reduce the amount of water that they're using to irrigate their parkway or their front lawn is really important.
Yeah, because that's a tough one. Like I get my neighbor wants to put the grass for the irrigation, less water, that's good. But at the same time, and even if they're not tearing down a tree to do it, because some areas don't have a tree already out there,
Commissioner Mccauley, let me help with that answer as well. We do have a parkway landscaping policy that that has been in draft and discussed at the city council. We do have certain recommendations. Artificial turf is something that's allowed at this particular point. It is a concern though to us because if there isn't irrigation, especially for newly planted trees, it becomes very problematic. Those trees not only need a period of establishment, but they will need water. I mean, our water table is significantly low, and that's a very, very major concern, which has actually been one of the concerns and problems that we've had with newly planted trees, where a property owner would not properly water that tree on a regular basis to allow it to establish and to allow it to flourish. Under our policy, we do have limitations in terms of how close that artificial turf needs to be or can be adjacent to the tree trunk, because there are health issues for the tree. There are artificial heating to the tree roots that becomes problematic, and water retention. We want the soil to be able to breathe around the tree. We want the water and the moisture to penetrate into the soil, but also to be able to evaporate out of the soil. Otherwise, it will cause root rot amongst other issues. So that is something that we look at. And when someone is asking us for assistance with that policy, we provide it. We want to give them that guidance. Matter of fact, we talk about the complaints. Yes, they are not frequent in terms of complaints related to trees. But in the last 2 weeks, we had a couple of locations that came forward as a concern. One was directly related to artificial turf that was being placed. And when our arborist went out to look at it, he found that the adjacent neighbor had actually severed the roots all around this beautifully magnolia tree that was very mature. And right now, we're very concerned with the health and safety of the tree and have the potential recommendation of actually removing that tree for that reason. For the neighboring resident that wants to put in the artificial turf, Albert is working with them and giving them guidance in terms of how much of that can be covered, how to maintain the tree and preserve it, and how to be able to provide that water still for that tree. So yes, that is a concern for us.
Thank you for that. I would also like to chime in on Alberto. I've met him before. He is awesome. He does a great job in Alta Vista Park. We've had to consult him on many occasions. So you can actually have fake turf with a real tree in the parkway. That there is a formula there for that to exist. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And so another question I have is you mentioned, ladies, that we're a deficit of like 2,000 trees. Is there been a census of the trees of the parkway? Is that where that number comes from?
So, I mean, Ted would be able to speak to the data better than I, but from what I understand, they contract West Coast arborists and they have a comprehensive survey of every, I know they have every tree in the city. Do they have every parkway? Because my numbers came from Alberto, so I assumed that he got those numbers from them. But again, Ted,
does a tree census exist? And B, if it does, is that something the city does periodically, or is it just kind of randomly?
So let me separate those two issues. A tree census in terms of what's existing, absolutely, that happens on a regular basis.
Okay.
So WCA has had and currently has a 4-year contract with the city. They have a software system that they use to actually to identify not just every tree, but in Arbor Access, they also, every time they come to that tree, it's a 4-year cycle for the tree trimming. When they get to that tree, they'll identify the tree, the health and well-being of the tree, because they have their own arborist that actually looks at the tree, and they record that information in Arbor Access for us. So they not only do the trimming, but they also give us an update on the tree, the maturity of the tree, etc. What we do not have, though, is we don't have a tabulation of the parkways that are missing the trees in the sense. And I can't substantiate the 2,000 plus number of missing trees as it's been called. But I can tell you that there are certain locations where even under the parkway, there are conflicting utilities that will prohibit us from being able to plant those trees. There are a lot of circumstances. I think in one of the images, it showed the small parkway area between two driveways. A lot of times it looks great on the surface. When we go to explore that further, there could be underground gas, underground water, underground other utilities. Those are all things that we would look at, or Alberta would look at before making a recommendation for that tree to actually be able to plant it. But we have had locations where, unfortunately, trees were planted previously and they happen to be sitting right on top of water or gas mains.
And so like with at my property, we had a while back, Southern California Edison, they periodically come and trim the trees that are close to the wires. And is there a database that they use as well, or is it the same? Are we sharing information? Is that where that information comes from?
There's two things there. Edison actually comes in, they have their vegetation management under their CPUC regulation that they need to keep trees within 15 feet or more from any live wires that are out there. If they are in the Parkway and they have concerns, they come to us and they work with our Public Works engineering team to ensure that they are trimming the tree appropriately. If you've seen them in other communities, and I've seen them in many other communities where their veg management team wants to just come in and literally dissect a tree or chop off a segment that's 15 feet away and that's it. We've stopped them from doing that. We make sure that when they end the tree trimming, it actually looks like it's a good tree trimming and not necessarily that it's just a cutoff for that specific distance. That we don't have any regulations or authority over them though on private property. They are working under CPUC regulations. On my personal property, they ask for permission, they come on board and they will come up and trim a tree until they believe it's 15 feet or further away from those lines.
But that is separate from what you were saying, that the contractor that the city uses is completely different. It's not.
That is correct. For them, it's strictly for their CPUC requirement to make sure that they keep their vegetation or potential burn items away from their lines.
And is there a set goal of a number that the city tries to plant each year with trees? Or is it just we replace where we can?
We have a minimum directive of 100 trees per year. The council has actually increased that in the past, and we've tried to increase that number. And under our current contract with WCA, they are also a contractor that will plant those trees for us. Okay. So it is a component of their contract for those to do as well.
And I'd imagine those are the types of trees that are the canopy, that are a little bit, they're not going to be a bare tree, or they're more.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, the recommended trees list can expand. I'm not going to tell you that that's the exclusive list of trees that we want to recommend for the city under any circumstance. But history has basically taught us some trees are better, some are more problematic for parkways that are narrow. In Redondo, we have a lot of places in the south part of the city where we have very wide parkways. So we may recommend a tree that can grow to a bigger trunk and bigger canopy and a more robust root structure than we would in a 4-foot parkway, as an example. So that variety is not just because we want to have the variety, but it also gives us the flexibility to tailor the type of tree for the type of conditions and the type of settings that we're able to plant it in.
And I mean, I could go on all night, but I'll try to keep it short. The more I think about this, the North Redondo is, I think it's so much easier to plant trees in South Redondo in many more opportunities. You must find it very challenging in considering with North Redondo, you don't have the parkway. You're getting into the private property rights if you're forcing them to put it in the front of their house. You do have the ADU issue with SB 9. That's going to muck everything up for sure. Do you have any ideas of any opportunities for North Redondo where you could add more trees? Is there any?
Our challenges at North Redondo go beyond trees, because where we don't have a parkway, our sidewalks are generally 4 to 5 feet wide. And whenever we put in a sign, we put in a fire hydrant, not us, actually Cal Water does, where we put in a stop sign even, we've got to make sure that that pedestrian path to travel is ADA compliant as much as possible. There are locations where there are utility poles and other things that may preclude that because the right-of-way is just not there. From a public works perspective, because we don't have the public right-of-way, yeah, we're unable to plant any trees in that sidewalk, unlike certain other places where the sidewalk may be 8 feet or wider. Then we can put a tree well and plant the tree inside of that tree well. But if it's just 4 to 5 feet wide, a tree well has to be 4 foot by 4 foot, and it would take away the ADA access for the path of travel for a pedestrian. We would not support the installation of any trees in those locations.
I know in North Redondo, go up there on any garbage day with trash cans in the way, trying to walk your dog or go for a walk around the block. It's really difficult. And I commend this process to try to get trees up there. I'm going to leave my comments at that right now. And Ted, I appreciate your answering my questions, and ladies as well. It was a great presentation, and let's keep the discussion going. Thank you.
Commissioner Lang, did you have a direct response to something that was said by Commissioner Mccauley?
It was something that that Ted had mentioned in his response.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and respond, and then I'm gonna start with my question.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I should give you.
Oh, that's okay.
But he just said that. So what I've also noticed is in regards to there's some places that have just been completely paved over with cement that look like they used to be planters. And so I think those are also missed opportunities to get a tree in the ground. And the WCA, when they plant a tree for us, Ted, do they come and water it, or how do they ensure that it takes, because I know, what is it, 3 years it takes for a tree to sort of establish itself?
They don't have, under their contract, they don't have an establishment period for them to water. We have, in certain circumstances, had a city trailer that'll go out and water, and it's generally a 12-month period that we want to ensure that occurs. But it really does depend on the property owner continuing to water the tree on a regular basis. That is really the key. We don't have the resources to be out there watering every single tree that's planted on an annual or biannual basis. But even a mature tree, after it has been established, will still need a certain level of watering just to keep it going, because our water table, again, is too far down. And when we don't get as much either just rain and or a spread of that rain through the year, it could be problematic for even a mature and healthy tree.
Okay. I know that new construction is required to irrigate the right-of-way. So if they put in a tree, that we're not really too unless they turn it off because they don't want the tree there, do something like that. And then just to reference something Commissioner Mccauley said about the trees on private property in North Redondo. I did touch on it in my presentation, but I just wanted to say it again. In new construction in North Redondo, the city requires a tree to be planted in the front right of way, and that's required for their certificate of occupancy to be given. And so I think, that's definitely something that I would like to explore and understand why they're allowed to make that requirement. And if then we would be able to make the requirement that tree is kept there. So anyways, I'll stop.
Commissioner Lang, I'll just help you with that. Yes, whenever a property owner comes in for discretionary approvals by the city to do any significant work on their property that requires either planning and or buildings approval, yeah, they do have that in their code to require the planting of a new tree in their front yard setback. So yes, that is part of the code requirement today, and it applies to any discretionary approvals that comes for residential.
Okay. Thank you all so much. I'm going to step in because it doesn't look like there's any other hands raised, and I do have some questions and comments, and I'll in the interest of time, I've done this for a while, and I know how city council works, and so I'm going to come up with if I can come up with I don't know if I'm allowed to come up with a motion as chair on this, honestly, but I'm going to kind of try to lead someone in this direction, because I think that's the way that this information will be best packaged for council. To me, the way it seems right now is that there isn't a lot of controversy with items, elements 1 and 4. Seems like council will not have an issue with these two, as they seemingly have no fiscal impact and very little controversy associated with defining the definition of a heritage tree and the species list. It seems like no one's really going to argue with those. I feel like, the establishment of those things does not, infringe on any sort of rights or I just can't imagine somebody getting really, upset about approving those two items. I think that an ordinance is definitely needed. I feel like, Public Works is amazing and they do amazing work and they have so much on their plate. But the thing that is bothersome when I read things like case-by-case basis, done on a case-by-case basis, that kind of language makes me nervous because I feel like we really need language that is binding and concrete. I do agree with Laura on that. There may be exceptions to what is written in the ordinance, but I don't like to have anything be, we just deal with that on a case-by-case basis. I don't think that's good practice in general. There were a couple elements of the proposal that I had questions about. The urban forestry manager versus one of the things in the proposal was to hire an actual city arborist. And is that still part of the proposal or was that removed?
It's not. I would answer that not necessarily as part of the proposal. When we went to the city council, all those items were discussed. And what the council asked us to do is to focus on these 4 items to come to you, the Rec and Parks Commission, to the Planning Commission, and to the Public Works Commission to get your input on these 4 focal items. Whether the council takes that back up afterwards when we come back to them, that's up to them. But it's neither on or off the table at this particular point.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. I was a little confused because I think that the last thing we would need is to create a whole new role. I don't think we have funding for that. I think if anything, the best thing to do in that scenario is perhaps give the current, I think you said it's Alberto, the, additional training or additional, something, if there's concern about that. That's my 2 cents about that is the last thing we need is to create an additional position. And then there was something else about creating a commission just for, so an actual commission, like aside from was that?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a commission. I just spoke with Laura about this because I'm not sure it might be something that only meets 3 times a year, but all cities that are a Tree City USA, so there's hundreds and hundreds of cities, they have a tree canopy committee, group of
what you were saying before. Okay, because somewhere in the proposal, it made it seem like there should be like an actual commission that was meeting and that increased fiscal impact that it would require staff and et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted.
So that's actually something that we still stand by, that it would be really helpful to have this group of people that was invested in residents, but we don't know. It's up to us how we put that group of people together, and how the outcome would be that Alberto would create an audience for that group of people. And so they could discuss tree issues together. If there was any sort of new policy that they would recommend. And in many cities, these tree ordinances aren't something that's written and then that's it. And they don't look at it for 20 years. It's something that grows and changes with the needs of the community. And I would like to also add that there are hundreds of wonderfully written tree ordinances. The city of Encinitas is one that I think is one of the best ones that I've read. And even if you go on their website, there's so much information for residents. They have a whole list of trees that are being removed, and it says the reason why they're being removed. So what we're trying to create is we're not inventing the wheel. We just want this for our community because it has benefited other communities. And as for the urban forestry position, that is just put in the ordinance so that if Alberto leaves and they have to fill the position. So then we're not a city without someone functioning in that role.
So
Okay,
Chairperson,
that makes sense.
Super, let me add to that. This particular component that you're asking about is just like the arborist. It's neither off the table nor on the table. When we went to the city council, we'd identified the potential that they may either create a commission or committee, if you will, or they may utilize the Public Works Commission, who, again, Public Works has a broad spectrum of responsibilities in the public right-of-way. That is, again, an item that was not requested for further conversation by the council. It may come back up when we come to the city council, when we return to the city council. But at this particular point, again, it's neither on the table or off the table.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess just personally, not speaking on behalf of the commission, obviously, but my personal opinion is that we should either have an urban forestry manager or a city arborist, have them be one and the same, perhaps make one's job responsibilities either greater or less or something like that. But we certainly don't need two positions for this.
Yeah, and I will clarify that our urban forestry manager it's part of his job requirement to be a certified arborist. So we can't hire a replacement for Alberto unless that person is also a certified arborist.
Right. No, I get what you're, yeah, I get that. The other thing that I was reading very carefully was this statement or letter from I believe it's the AAGLA. Is that who that is from? And their wording, I mean, clearly they're very concerned about rental properties and incurring costs to plant trees. And they say something, there's a direct quote, that it would be harmful for to timely address trees located on their own property. I don't really know what that means. I'm confused by that. I see the writing on the wall already about who's going to come speak on this issue at the council meeting. I guess my thing about 3 is sort of a question, the private property issue. So if there's a tree, this is a hypothetical question, right? If there's a tree that's on my property that is fine starting out, like it's fine, everything looks fine with it, so it doesn't need to be removed, it's healthy, everything's fine. But then all of a sudden it very quickly starts causing, plumbing, foundational safety concerns, something like that on my property. And then I have to wait for a public hearing. Could that then be a lengthy process? Could I already incur, structural damage, plumbing damage, something like that? I guess I have no problem. I mean, I live in North Redondo. I think I might be the only one on this panel. We are, for the lack of better terms, house rich, tree poor. There's so much house and so little tree here. I sometimes have a hard time finding a patch of grass to walk my dog on. And we already have the issue with tall and skinny, tall and skinny, tall and skinny in the Golden Triangle area. So I'm, forget about the trees for a second. This is actually kind of a very strategic, excellent way to sort of fight SB 9, the housing bill, by number 2. I mean, if you're not allowed to remove trees, then, it is actually quite strategic in this regard, because we don't want, just a paved, we need green space. Even in North Redondo, everywhere. And so I'm less concerned with number 2 for that reason, just selfishly, because I do live here in North Redondo, and I feel like we need some rules on private property about or construction projects with, just providing as much green tree, space as possible, because here it's just house after house after house. But I'm just sort of wondering for number 3 about removal of, I'm just wondering, things can take so long if you have to go through different channels and you're having a legitimate concern with a tree affecting something on your property. Does anyone have any insight on that?
I mean, I would feel like Ted or Rob would be, because they're the ones that come out and address, right? When a resident has an issue, Ted, Alberto goes out there, and I mean, I know a lady on Avenue A who, she said her tree was dropping, so he got someone to come out and trim it for her. So is that true, Ted, that you guys would receive those? most of those inquiries about, tree problem?
We do on the public right of way. That's fully under our domain. So if there's a problem with a Parkway tree that's causing issues on the private property or not, but they have a concern with a public right of way tree, yes, they contact us. We'll go out. We'll address it. We'll assess it, etc. Chairperson Super, I think your inquiry is if there's a private property tree that's wreaking havoc on the property itself.
But
that if there's an ordinance that precludes an owner from addressing it immediately and having to go through a committee or commission or anyone else, could that be a critical path issue that may be, causing them some significant harm? Obviously, that could very well be, but we don't know unless there's an ordinance in place.
Yeah.
We know as a property owner today, if you have an issue on your property, there is no restrictions or regulation that would prohibit you from addressing your own private property tree. Should there become restrictions, then yes, by all means, you'd have to go through some proper channels to get that authorization for removal.
Right. And I'm not saying that that's likely or not. I guess I'm just sort of playing devil's advocate of some of this, because I read this whole packet very thoroughly. And so I read the letters and just sort of like forecasting what the major issues are going to be when this comes to council. And this is going to be one of the major issues. So
yeah, so in Manhattan Beach, they have, like I said, in the tree section, they do not have sidewalks. And they have this, and I included an excerpt from the Manhattan Beach tree ordinance. And so I think they do have to get a permit to remove the tree. And I don't know what that permitting process, and that could be what this is. Maybe it doesn't go in front of the planning commission. Maybe instead it's a permitting process and you just have to say like, this is why I want to remove the tree. And it would be Alberta looking at the application and saying, well, okay, or I have to go out there and look at it. And I realized that, that may take more time away from his duties with like maintaining the parks and stuff. But ultimately, if this is important to us, the council will support it, the residents will support it, and we'll have the benefit of having trees in North Redondo. And again, if we are having these trees put in new construction, it would be nice to understand what the mechanism is where we can require them to plant it. And if we can require that they need a permit to remove it, that would make logical sense to me. So that's something I definitely think we should explore. But said,
okay.
Chairperson, let me ask Rob. Rob, you've got a little bit more insight than I do on the process in Manhattan Beach. Can you sort of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sitting in Manhattan Beach as we speak, so I do have a little bit of knowledge. I do know that their ordinance only applies to front yard setbacks. So like generally the first 20 feet back from the sidewalk, trees with trunks above a certain diameter, I think it's 12 inches. What I don't know is if you request to move such a tree, the process you go through. I don't think it's administrative. I think you have to go through a commission process, but I won't swear to that. I haven't been through it myself.
And you have some insight on the maintenance of the parkway or the front yard setback trees and who does what on that? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, unlike in Redondo, here in Manhattan Beach, we're responsible for maintaining our own parkways, whether it's grass or shrubs, or if we have trees and the tree needs to be trimmed, it's upon us. It's our responsibility to hire somebody or to trim it ourselves, unlike here in Redondo where we do everything in the city.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that Laura, one of the attendees, the presenter, does have her hand raised.
Yes. Would you like me to allow her to speak right now?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you, Chairperson. If I hear your concern right, it's in an urgent situation. And those kind that, a property owner may have some peril going on caused by a tree. It's unsafe, it's causing immediate damage, and it needs to be removed. Ordinances can be written to account for that for after the fact, like permitting, administratively done. There's definitely ways that we can work around it so no one's hands are tied by a arduous or lengthy process. There certainly is when it comes to safety matters, and so sewer lines or water lines would be a safety matter. It can be worked out. It can be worked out and written into an ordinance so no one's penalized for removing a tree in certain circumstances. Does that answer? Was that what you were alluding to?
Yeah, I'm just worried about, red tape and, things tend to take a long time just in the building process in general to get permits for construction. And then, so if you're having a legitimate issue with, oh my gosh, this route is, like you're saying, like it's now a plumbing issue or, a safety issue or something. And then you're, struggling to try and get permission to remove the tree. That was my concern.
It could be worked out. I mean, it really, there's ways to do that.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's kind of it for my questions, except I guess, I read this thoroughly, the whole package, but the one thing I didn't sort of have time to do on my own was sort of look into, the ordinance in Encinitas or in Manhattan Beach. Is there any contentiousness? Is there any, do the residents of those two cities have major issues with their tree ordinance? Does anyone have any info on that?
So if I can, I've spoken to their arborist, and he said the community has sort of like rallied around their tree canopy, and that it's something they see it as an asset. They're very proud of it. And so it's a program where they took these small steps initially, like they wrote a tree ordinance, and then the council was so happy with what was going on that they increased the budget to, get more tree maintenance, more trees in the ground. And so when I was speaking to him, it seemed like it was a really positive thing in the city. He didn't, and I'm happy to talk to him again and be like, I actually talked to him about getting trees in the ground, because I said, one of the things I think Public Works struggles with is getting support from a resident to put a tree in front of their house. And he told me what they do down there is they do these door hangers. So say they identify a block with like 5 or 6 missing trees, then he'll put a door hanger on there and it says, we're going to plant a tree in this space. What kind of tree do you want? You can pick from these 5 items. So the resident feels some ownership over what's being planted in front of their house and is more likely to take care of it and water it. And so I know that, that it's, if you go and look at their website too, it's very beautifully done. And I do want to say that a lot of cities will hire private consultants to come in and actually write their ordinance. And I think that's probably what you see when you go onto their website. But what me and Laura sees this as is like the first step. It seems like it might feel overwhelming and there's a lot of talk about cost. But I think what's really important right now is not to like shut the door on any of these things because we're worried about cost or can we do this? Because I think these are things that we really, these are important things, but we don't have to, we can work around these things and the concern.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Mccauley.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just curious as to, I think we're having a great discussion and this is very informative. And I think that we've made a lot of progress, but I'm curious as to what do we need to do for the city council as far as, are we going to advise them in what way? Are we going to make do we vote on anything here today, or is it just that we have the discussion?
Well,
how do we give our advice?
I think that just the history, I think I can answer that. The best way in the years I've been doing this is definitely to have somebody make a motion addressing all 4 items, even if we haven't made a full decision on 1 or 2 of the items. Those could be, on item 3, please look further into blank, check, 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 so, but I think we do need to make a motion and actually address each item.
Should we do like a motion per each one? Would that make more sense in case, or maybe start with like all four, say, hey, are we all in agreement here for all four? And then if not, then break it down one by one.
I mean, I'm open to anything. I don't think as chair, I'm actually allowed to, I'm still confused. And this may be my last night as chair about when I'm allowed to make a motion and when I'm not. But I don't think I'm actually allowed to make a motion, but I definitely have a vote, correct? Is that correct?
So you are allowed to make a motion if you would like to.
Okay. I've been told I can't make a motion. I don't know. I think so many times. Maybe, yeah. Okay. I can make a motion. All right. Well then, yeah. I mean, I think, I don't have to be the one to make the motion, but I do think that we should make a motion with some thoughts on each one. I don't think we need 4 separate motions. So yeah.
So
it just seems challenging to make one motion with commenting on 4 different issues.
Chair Super, if I may, I apologize for interrupting, but I just procedurally just want to make sure we have not done public comment on this item.
Okay.
My guess is that we may not have any, but I just want to make sure that we go through that practice before we go into making the motion.
That's right. And I just forgot because I'm looking at the panelists and it doesn't look like we have anyone, but maybe we do, and I'm just not seeing anyone. So do we have any public participation on this item?
So Chair, Laura was the only one that had her hand raised. So we addressed that. And there's no comments at this time.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for the reminder. Yeah, I mean, if you want to make a motion on each one, I'm sure that we can do it that way too. I mean, that's fine because then we could just have our thoughts.
I'm just trying to condense it into the areas we kind of have consensus, and that will be helpful for the city council.
Yeah, for sure.
And even for the areas that maybe we don't have consensus, to also be transparent with the city council on that as well. So I'm not really experienced in motions either, but just generally speaking, I did kind of ask Ted a question about the policy of the city to preserve and add trees. So I would say whatever motion we do make, language I would like to include would be the Parks and Rec Commission strongly encourages the city to increase canopy wherever possible throughout the city. Some language like that initially we're kind of putting a marker down that for sure we're, as a commission, we do support that. We see the benefits of that. Would be, I don't know if that's a motion by itself or just something to be included in a motion, but I'll start with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. Why don't you word that as a motion, and then maybe I will make a friendly amendment to that motion.
So I would make a motion that the Parks and Rec Commission strongly encourages the city to pursue adding tree canopy along the parkways, maximize tree canopy along the parkways as much as possible. And then there, I'm not really sure.
Okay. I mean, I think that that's a good initial motion, right? And we can all.
I mean, that could be its own little motion just to kind of get.
Yeah. So I'll second that.
Okay.
Motion.
So then.
And then can I not do the roll call for this, or should I? Do I need to?
Well, if there's no comments on the motion, then yes, I can do a roll call vote on that if you'd like me to.
Actually, you know what? I believe one hand just went up. So Commissioner Escontrias.
Okay, I have a question. Is it possible for us to get an idea of what our consensus is before we make a motion to council? Or do we have to do a motion to do a motion type of deal? I think if we ask the question among us is like, okay, are we initially somewhat in general or in concept amenable to an ordinance, and then we find out that yes or no, and then we make a motion that way? Is that possible to discuss it and then just determine? Because if we're all on the same page, then the motion will go smoother as to what we're asking.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. I mean, I think is there maybe the best way to do it is are any commissioners opposed to the formation of a tree ordinance?
I would
How
say,
about we go through, I would say put it out as, in general, at this point, there's a tree motion or rather an ordinance motion or an ordinance, and then go through and ask everybody so that everybody does have a vote and it is documented that each of us did have a say into it as opposed to saying that we're against it. So we would say, I would form it this way. It's been put forth that there's an ordinance. If you're, and then go to each person and ask them, yay or nay, are you in favor of presenting it?
Well, but the only issue is that there's 4 separate items.
you can agree to some of it and not agree to other parts.
Right. So we can't really, it's not really, we can't really do it in that simple fashion.
But I think one of the first questions was, should there be an ordinance? As opposed to just goes to policy. And then once we decided, yes, there should be an ordinance, however, we may not all agree on the type of ordinance. I think that can be a start.
Well, I would kind of disagree with the question of an ordinance. It's not really our place to, if there's an ordinance or not, that's a city council. We're just.
No, I mean, the thing is that, but they're asking our opinion on whether or not there should be an ordinance.
Well, if we could separate the ordinance from the subject, just kind of, these are the parts of a proposal. So I would go back to the first motion on the table right now and maybe start with the unified statement.
Yeah,
I mean, interject. It seems like the council, this is Jeff, the council is asking us citizens if there should be guidelines in place for trees. I think the answer is yes. And they want to make sure we don't think that they're overstepping their bounds as government officials to impose guidelines. So I think we can all agree that an ordinance is a good thing. Other cities have it. And as long as it's written properly, we should be okay with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. It's just that, at least I personally would like to have some input specifically on the 4 separate items that have been presented to us this evening.
But I would think that here's what would be the idea is that I think if we in general agree that there should be an ordinance, that's the first step. The intricacies of the ordinance itself is probably going to go through quite a few phases anyway, unless you want to say, okay, this is what the commission has found. Yes, as a whole, and I'm just throwing it out there, the commission agrees that there should be an ordinance. Okay, of that ordinance 1, 2, and 3, or 4, 3 commissioners agree with 1, 3 commissioners 2, 3, or maybe possibly that way. And then, because again, I think if we're trying to nail it down that we want or that we agree with one thing, there's going to be discussion. It's going to take a while because everybody's going to put their hands into this before you kind of it gets fleshed out.
I totally agree. I think like our discussions and our determinations at this point are far, early on in the process for the city and certainly for the city council. So I'm in favor of trying to just be as direct as possible. Give I want to try to give as meaningful feedback to the city council as possible.
Because I think what'll happen, the staff that's here, when it does go to council, hopefully what they can do is say, this is some of the discussions that went on, and this were some of the concerns that Parks and Rec had, and which would be whatever I said or what somebody else said. And then hopefully that'll be put into either a staff report or an understanding before it really starts getting fleshed out as to what our concerns are. And hopefully what will occur is that, or maybe we can put the first part that we are in favor of the ordinance. However, we would like it to come back prior to the vote, that whether or not of the portions of the ordinances that they have fleshed out on the legal side and on the other community side, that somebody else has a good idea before it's be adopted or taken any further.
I just think that, council has been already really specific with us about what they want our input on. And so I really think that, we should give them our input on each of these items.
I would agree. Like maybe just go through the 1 through 4 items and give them what people say about each of those, or even if we vote on each one.
But I would throw this out as well. Even though they come back saying this is all we want you, or this is what we're asking, I believe we have fiduciary responsibility that if you have concerns beyond those, that you voice them. Because again, as supposedly an advisory commission, is that we owe it to them as opposed to them telling us, this is all we want to hear about. We don't care about anything else. And that's tough. That's not the way, hopefully the way our system should be working. If you have legitimate concerns that are a little bit out there, then you should be able to voice them and not, again, we don't want to go too far into the weeds and way off, but at the same time, I think that they have a responsibility also to listen to us. Otherwise, then why are we here?
Well, right. And I don't think anybody's trying to prohibit additional input. I just want to make sure that as a commission, we're addressing, what they've asked us. And then of course we can have additional input beyond that as well. Okay. Ted, did you want to make a comment?
I did. And Chairperson, if I may help along in this, in my mind, with those 4 items, as an example, I would say if you're supportive of a definition of a protected and heritage tree, to support that in an ordinance, maybe that's what you would say, that you would support it and provide some parameters on what that definition is. We heard of a sample tree that was 100 inches in diameter. Obviously, that's not necessarily the case in the majority of Redondo trees, but in other cases, it's a tree that's over 12 inches in diameter. You could say 12 inches, you could say 18 inches, you could say, as a diameter parameter, you could choose that. If you know of any specific species of trees, you could lay that in here, or you can just make it as simple as, any tree that's over X number of inches in diameter on its trunk, then you support it with that parameter, then you address the first bullet point. On the second bullet point, do you support the prohibition in removal of trees that are in parkways adjacent to a driveway? If you support that, then, you could say yes and add anything more to that. And then on the very last one, the type of trees recommended and discouraged from being planted on public or private property. We've identified the 18 in the list that we have now, and we said we're open to any others. So if there are any other species of trees that you'd like to have added to that recommended list of trees, by all means, you can add that in. So I think if you go through them bullet by bullet and identify your support and identify any of those parameters, that may be very helpful for the council to understand. And then anything above and beyond those 4 bullet points is also good information for the council to know.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thank you. I don't know about anyone else, but I don't feel knowledgeable enough on number 1 to come up with my own tree specifications. At this point, I read it thoroughly, but that seems a little bit beyond my capabilities. I would just go with what is specified in the ordinance. Commissioner Lang, do you have any input? Your hand is raised.
Yeah. So I
so I'm new here, right? But in the spirit of like trying to work through this process, I was sort of under the impression that we could make like a very sort of general motion. Like I move for the city to establish regulations regarding the removal of trees on private property in certain situations. So we're not binding ourselves to any one specific, like people can't remove their trees ever, but we do support, general regulations around that process. Or I move for the city to create regulations to protect Parkway trees from driveway expansions or unfettered, tree removals for driveway expansions. I move for the city to create a criteria for heritage trees. So we're not really saying, it needs to include this, this, and this, but we're saying we support this process. That's what I thought we were going to do as a motion, because you and I'm not an arborist. I can't talk about the species of trees
right
in a very informed way. So that feels overwhelming to me. Yes. But I still think that we're able to give input, or you're able to give input in a meaningful way without being able to list tree species.
Right. Okay. Does anyone, let's see. Kelly, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to remind the Commission that there is a motion on the table. So if you did want to move forward as Ted suggested, I just want to remind you that we would just have to strike that motion to move forward. Or vote on it, whatever the Commission would like to do.
I think we should vote on it. We have a second, and that's a very general motion, and we can have additional motions. So I think we should vote on it. That's my opinion.
Would you like me to do the roll call?
Yeah, please. That'd be great.
Can you repeat the motion again, please?
I apologize. I didn't get all of it. I don't know if Ted or Rob happened to get it.
Yeah, I can take a shot at it. What I've got is the motion is for the Commission to strongly encourage the city to pursue maximizing tree canopies along parkways as much as possible.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Incontreras?
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm back online. I don't know what happened. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Rowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Lang?
Yes.
And Chair Super?
Yes. Okay, so I really like where Commissioner Lang was going with her train of thought, keeping it positive and specific, but sort of general at the same time, in the sense that we're not, trying to talk about specific, tree species or anything of that nature that's way beyond anything that I know I'm capable of doing. So, Commissioner Lang, are you allowed to make a motion on this?
So maybe Kelly would know better. I was just in the commissioner's orientation, and I asked if I had to recuse not participate in the vote in any way. And Todd Lowenstein said that if I was going to benefit monetarily from the adoption of a tree ordinance, then I could not participate in the vote. But I wonder, maybe Kelly can say if I can make a motion.
No, you're exactly correct. So if there's no financial gain on your part for this, then you are welcome to participate in the vote for the item.
So thank you. So the reason why I'm saying that is I just think the way you're articulating it is, especially since you've had so much more experience with this than we have, that perhaps if you would like to start making some motions, then we can get some seconds. I just like the way you're articulating
Okay.
items.
So the first one is on the heritage trees. So I move for the city to create a criteria for heritage trees.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And then can we get a roll call?
Sure. Commissioner Contreras,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley, Commissioner Mccauley,
Yes.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Agreed.
and Chair Super.
Agreed. Okay, awesome. Do we have any other motions then?
I have a few more that I had read off to you, so I divided them up.
Okay, that's super helpful. Yeah.
Okay. So I move for the city to create regulations to protect parkway trees from driveway expansions.
I'll second that.
Are we ready to vote on that one?
Okay.
No discussion? Okay. Commissioner Contreras,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
No.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Agree.
and Chair Super.
Agreed. Okay, let's move to another motion if we can.
Okay. I move for the city to establish regulations regarding the removal of trees on private property in certain situations.
I'll second that.
Can I have a repeat of the motion, please?
Yes. I move for the city to establish regulations regarding the removal of trees on private property in certain situations.
Okay.
So, yeah. So basically, if the way I see that motion is that, maybe it's a tree in the front setback, but not in the back. So that's something that, hopefully we could work out and not to overspeed.
Okay. I see what you're saying. So it keeps it nice and broad. So it's there.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions about that or discussion about that before we go to a roll call on it?
I think that's very broad. I think that's the way we need this.
Okay. I think we're ready.
Okay, Commissioner Contreras,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
No.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Agree.
and Commissioner Super.
Agreed.
And I have one more. I move for the city to adopt a tree species list.
I'll second that.
We ready for a vote? No discussion?
Yeah. Is there any comments or questions about that one? I don't think so.
Okay.
Ready.
Commissioner Contreras,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
Agree.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Agree.
and Chair Super.
Agree. Okay, now is there anything else, Commissioner Escontrias or anyone else that had any other further comments on this that want to take note to give to council?
I have to apologize. What was the motion number one again? I didn't write it down. I got the other three. What was the first one? Laura or Maura?
Yes, it was, I move for the city to create a criteria for heritage trees.
That was two. Number one.
I move for the city to create regulations to protect parkway trees from driveway expansions.
There you go. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Okay,
that.
you're welcome.
Okay, so then the vote tallies and everything else gets sent to council with those motions as well, all of the nays and all of the ayes.
Yes, the input from the commission will be packaged when the city council considers this item.
Okay.
Right. So we will be taking not only the motions made by the commission, but we'll be taking the full minutes from the commission's meeting.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. Commissioner Mccauley?
Yeah, if I could, you just asked if there anything else to forward on to the city as far as comments and stuff.
Yeah.
I would just say that I would like the city to focus focus on expanding Canopy in North Redondo. I would think that's a priority for sure. I know it's citywide, but I know that there's a lot of challenges in North Redondo, and I just think that they should be aware of that. Or they probably are, but just to voice that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to chime in to Kate that I'm actually more North Redondo than you. I'm at pretty much at Artesia Inglewood. I pay taxes to Lawndale. So,
sorry about that. I didn't know that. You're new to the commission.
And Ted knows there were 25 trees on Rockefeller on the Greenway. There's now 7 because of the gophers.
Okay. Well, this was a great discussion on this, everybody. I'm very pleased with the ordinance, with the work that went into it, and also our discussion. So,
I do have a question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. They indicated that there was a requirement of 100 trees a year or some sort. I'm curious to find out as to when was that enacted and how are we doing with that? And is it working? But how many trees have we planted since that's been required?
Rob, you want to address that for us?
Yeah, I can't give you an exact date. As I recall, it was implemented about in the last 3 to 4 years. I don't have data for the whole period, but I do remember Albert saying in the most recently completed fiscal year, we planted 107. So it may have taken a little bit of time to get up to speed. Sometimes we've been a little bit short-staffed over that time or a little short in budget, but we are fully funded now for 100 new trees a year. And as of the past fiscal year, we've met it, and I expect we will this year.
Okay, well, thank you to Public Works for sticking with us through this. And I think we can move along if that's okay with everybody.
Great. Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate that.
All right, so I guess we should jump back then to J1, which is election of officers.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. So this is just the annual rotation of the commission's selection of a chairperson and a vice chair. New this year is a change in our ordinance that also requires commissions to choose and nominate someone to serve as secretary. And so for tonight, we are asking the commission to fill all 3 of those roles. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have with any of that with this item.
I have to apologize. How often are these selections done?
It's an annual term.
So my question, because this is brand new as of September, what does the secretary do?
We had the exact same question, Chair. But really at this point, it's more of a ceremonial position. Staff will continue to create and monitor and draft the staff reports as well as the agendas and minutes and all of the more administerial items. So at this point, it's really just a ceremonial position.
Oh, okay. So perhaps it was created in September for other commissions where it's not that way, or?
I believe so. We don't know exactly the genesis for it, but yes, at least for this commission, it is just ceremonial.
Okay, great. Let's see if there's any hands, questions. And now it's been a year. So how do we go through? Do I do something? Am I, doing the nominations, or what?
I would just recommend maybe taking each position one by one, and you can ask for nomination, make sure that person who is nominated would like to accept, and then you can ask for a motion to formally put that person into that role.
Okay. All right, great. Well, guys, let's start with secretary then, low-hanging fruit. And let's take some nominations for secretary. Do we have any? There's no hands.
I'm sorry. So just to reiterate, you said it was the secretary is a ceremonial position? Is that what she said?
Well, it just means that you really aren't.
You don't do anything.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to be the secretary. I think someone needs to nominate me.
No, I believe that you can nominate yourself. Is that still correct?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I mean, in the spirit of moving things along, I'm happy to nominate myself.
And then we just need a second, right? To somebody.
Second that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is that all we need to do then? The floor is still open. Would anybody else like to nominate someone or themselves for the position of secretary? The floor is open. No. And then do we go through roll call again? Just all vote?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do a roll call vote.
Okay.
So we have Commissioner Contreras,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
Yes.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Yes.
and Chair Super.
Yes. Okay. We have a new secretary. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along to, let's do co-chair. Does anyone have any questions before we receive and accept nominations for co-chair?
Wasn't the Commissioner Rodriguez that position?
I believe so. I don't even remember. I am embarrassed that I don't remember. Is he?
He is co-chair, yes.
Okay. Okay.
He's still on the commission, right? He's just out.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So any nominations for co-chair?
So if we don't nominate, then he just stays there, right?
Yes, you can. If the commission would like, you certainly can push this item to the next meeting to where Commissioner Rodriguez can be here to speak on whether they would like to stay. It's up to the commission this evening. So yes, I'm sorry, I don't think I answered your question. Yes, he would remain the co-chair for the night, or excuse me, until the next meeting. Yes.
Okay. Or could we nominate him to do it?
I'm going to nominate Jacob. I know him personally. He's a good guy. He'll
do it, right?
Yeah, he'll do it. And I think he'll be in favor of doing it. So I nominate Jacob.
I'll second that.
Okay. Anyone else would like to nominate themselves or nominate someone else for co-chair? Okay, so I guess we do a roll call.
Commissioner Contreras,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
Agreed.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Yes.
and Chair Super.
Yes. Okay, moving right along, we've got chair. So would anyone like to nominate themselves or someone else for chair? I would like to nominate someone. I would like to nominate Chris Mccauley for chair.
Second.
Okay.
The floor is open. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves or someone else for chair?
So I take it that it would be healthy for us to all take turns and rotate. I assume that it's Chris's turn. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Chair Kate. You did a wonderful job, and you set a great example. So I hope you do a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kate.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you. Let's make it official though. Let's go through and vote.
Commissioner Escotrias,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
Agreed.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Agreed.
and Chair Super.
Agreed. Okay, painless. I think we're done. And then now we can move along to, I believe, our last item before. Oh wait, do I turn it right over, or do I finish this meeting?
You know, it's really up to the commission. If you would like to remain through the rest of this meeting, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, Commissioner Mccauley can assume the role immediately. It's whatever you're comfortable with.
I recommend Kate to continue and just dazzle us.
Is that okay with you, Chris?
Absolutely.
All right, there we go. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. All right, so then we'll move along to item J3. So I believe we need to go ahead and make a motion here, though, to receive and file a report on the Community Services Department sailing program and club activities. Can I get a motion to do that? Or actually, you know what? I can make a motion. I'm making a motion to do that. So I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, great.
Chair,
Excuse me, Chair. Oh, sorry, Kelly.
No. Go ahead, Michelle.
Excuse me, Chair. We do have someone that public comment on that item.
Oh, right. I thought we were going to have a, just because we're receiving and filing, I thought we were going to, do we not go through the presentation of it, or?
We can. So that's what I was going to just see what the commission would like to do. I can certainly provide the presentation, and then we can go into public comment if the commission would like. I can begin that presentation.
Yeah, I think especially since we have comment on it, we should definitely go through it. It isn't too long.
Yeah. Okay. Let me share my screen. If you can bear with me for just one moment. Okay. You all seeing the presentation okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so the commission, if you remember, asked for just some informational, some information on the city sailing program, which includes a sailing class and sailing classes and sailing clubs. The sailing classes also does include camps that are run for youth, and that program has been going on for over 40 years out of King Harbor. And as I said, that's year-round and youth sailing classes that are actually taught by part-time employees, but are certified by the American Sailing Association. In addition to the classes and camps, we also have a sailing club that has been in existence for over 20 years, and again, based out of King Harbor. And those members are participants that successfully complete a series of classes that are taught and offered through the city's contract class program. And these are the series of classes that are provided for residents to go through. And so once a participant completes these three courses, then they would be eligible then to become a member of the sailing club. This is just a quick inventory of the current vessels that the city has. City does have quite a few that are provided for both classes and for members of the club, for the sailing club. And just kind of a very high level look at the financials. Just wanted to note that because of the effects of the pandemic on the stoppage of classes and activities just across the board, what we did here and the way that these figures were calculated is that they are an average of the fiscal years between fiscal year 18-19 and 20-21. And so as you can see, the average annual expenses during that time was just over $75,000. and the average annual revenue was $43,000. Just want to note that annual revenue does include just under a $20,000 annual grant that the city does apply for and has traditionally received from the California Department of Parks and Recreation and the Boating and Waterways Division of that department. Specific to the sailing club, I know that there has been some questions regarding that relationship with the city. And so prior to November 2020, the sailing club activities were solely managed by a local nonprofit group. And that group did all of the full collection and retention of the membership fees. At that point, the city did not have any type of relationship with the club by way of the collection of those membership fees. And one of the benefits of club membership at that time was that members could use city-owned boats for free on Sundays, plus throughout the week for a rental cost. And so that was one of the benefits afforded to members at that time. Since November 2020, the city did begin the management of sailing club activities, which at that time did include the collection of the sailing fees. And we currently actually have 24 active memberships. So we were happy to see that those memberships come through because they were stalled because of the pandemic. So happy to report the 24 active memberships. And then as a result of the city assuming the collection of those membership fees, the local nonprofit sailing club no longer is using the city vessels for free. And so I believe what was mentioned at our last meeting is that we are going to be presenting this same presentation to the city council at their request as well. And so we will be asking the council for its recommendation on how we should move forward, both on the sailing program, but more so with the relationship with the sailing club. And so that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Thank you. It's nice to hear something about the sailing program. I haven't heard that since I've been a commissioner, so that's great. Let's see, questions. Commissioner Mccauley.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly, you said there's 24 memberships. What is the fee for the memberships for like a year?
It's the annual membership rate is $300.
Yeah, and that's just for like one person to be a member of the club?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And all of the boats are at the marina and they're city-owned boats?
Yes, I believe so, yes. They all are city-owned boats. I'm not too sure if all of them are at the marina. I do believe they are, but okay. I don't want to misspeak on that with 100% certainty.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lang.
Is there a reason the city council requested a report on the sailing club activities?
My understanding is that because of some concern over the city's, sorry, let me start over and kind of date back a little bit. So as I stated in November 2020, the city began the collection of the membership fees for the sailing club, mainly because it was so connected to the use of city equipment and city vessels. And so since that time, there has been some concern from some of the sailing club members, the leadership of that previous nonprofit, the local sailing club, that has raised some questions that City Council was interested in, similar to this commission, and kind of getting a high level look of the sailing club and sailing program, but then also moving forward, what should we do with that relationship with the sailing club and how should that be modeled off of?
Is there another, I don't even know if you know this, but is there another instance where the city sort of supplements like a recreation type program? Because I if I'm getting it right, is the concern that there's like that sort of delta between what the sailing club is bringing in versus what the city's expenses?
I don't know. I can't speak to specifically if that's the main concern. I can speak on a kind of a bigger, broader sense. It's not uncommon that cities support recreational programming to a certain level, because a lot of what our recreational programs provide is a service to the community. So it's not necessarily that if we're in the red in this program that there's a level of concern. Certainly something to talk about and talk through, but if that's specific to this, I'm not getting that sense. But certainly that could be something that will likely be part of the discussion.
Okay. Are all of the boats sailing boats?
I believe, you know what? I don't know, to be quite honest with you. I'm not too sure. Unfortunately, I apologize.
Oh, no, that's okay. And then there was some issue with using the Portofino Marina and a couple of dinghies that are there that haven't been used in some time. Was there any additional info on those boats or the use of that area of the facility for those boats?
I don't have any specific information on that, unfortunately, for tonight. So I can't speak to that. I apologize.
That's okay. Are there any other questions? I know we have a public participation item, so but I just want to see if there's any other questions from commissioners on this. Doesn't look like it. So can I go to the public participation?
Yes, we have Michael Martin. I will unmute him and he will have 3 minutes to speak. Michael, you can start.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, I have a lot of things to say, as it turns out. The report that you got is misleading and inaccurate in several ways. You're being asked to just pass this along to the city council. I would recommend that you send it back to be fixed. There were, in fact, 3 key issues that the council was concerned with. The policy shift regarding the sailing club was just one of them. The other 2 was the slips at the Portofino, which are in violation of a coastal commission agreement, and Waterfront and Economic Development is waiting for Recs and Parks to finish resolving other issues with the sailing club before they go and resolve that. But it's a violation issue. And then the third one was the budget response report highlighted the fact that the program itself is being subsidized to a much higher level per student than is really appropriate. And especially when you do that in a program where the instructional activity is in competition with private enterprise, whereas with most of the recreation instructional activities, they're subcontracted out to local businesses. So there's 2 policy issues here, and there's an actual compliance issue, and all of those need to be addressed in front of the city council, because the city council knows about all of them and is interested in them. The report itself needs to get its facts straight. The Redondo Beach Sailing Club is a nonprofit corporation that was set up in 1973. So it's been around for 47 years. And it was closely affiliated with the city of Redondo Beach through all that time. And that's reflected in the brochures and web pages. And the only thing that was ever missing was a written memorandum of understanding, for which the obvious fix would have been to put together a memorandum of understanding. But unfortunately, there was an abrupt unilateral policy shift by John LaRock before he left. And so I brought that to the attention of my city councilman as something that city council should look at, the actual policy here. So there is that. There's the question of why is the city forming clubs and primarily to make money? And why in this particular report is this being portrayed as the city taking over management of the club. The club is an existing corporation. The city did not take over management of it. It still exists separately. And if you look at the revenues that are being generated, that's fine. But, you know, this report's not complete until you look at the costs that were also incurred. The Redondo Beach Sailing Club collected dues primarily to pay for the city mandated liability insurance that kept the whole operation at arm's length from the city.
Excuse me, Chair. Michael, your time is up.
They may make a motion to extend if they choose to.
Chair, how would you like to proceed?
I'll make a motion to extend by 2 minutes.
I'll second that.
So should I proceed?
Yep, 2 minutes.
Okay. So, you know, at a minimum, you can tell reading between the lines, this was to some extent a revenue grab, but it didn't grab much revenue. And the report itself is not showing the offsetting costs. When the city takes over management of an activity, that means they're paying somebody to do something. That takes some time and money. So if you figure maybe 2 hours a week times 50 weeks and multiply that by some sort of fully loaded labor rate, you're going to eat a lot into the revenue that the city thinks that it was bringing in here. The other thing is the report states that basically states that none of that ever came back to the city. Well, that's flatly untrue. The report writer might not have known it. The last 2 boats that the city bought, there were significant contributions of money by the sailing club. In one instance, $1,000. In another instance, $1,800. In the case of the dinghies and the keel boats, there was significant sweat equity put in by the club. For the dinghies, the summer before last, the club members stripped the boat bottoms all the way down to bare fiberglass and redid the bottom paint. That was a major undertaking. We supplied the labor, we supplied the materials. We've also supplied labor and materials for some of the keel boats. I don't think the report that's being sent along to the city council is in fact accurate. I think it's in some cases extremely misleading to the point of just not being true. And I would recommend that the Planning Commission refer it back to staff to be fixed for the factual errors and to address all the policy issues that City Council is interested in. Otherwise,
Michael, your time is up.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for your comments. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or any motions or any discussion about how to proceed with this item? Commissioner Lang?
Can I ask Michael a question?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So I was hearing everything that you said, but I wasn't sure if I'm still unclear on sort of it sounds like you're upset with what happened, but I'm not sure what side of things you're on, so I don't know if that's something that Michael can clarify, or if maybe.
Can I just dovetail on that? Just let me kind of like ask a question as well, because my question is related. So basically what I don't understand about the comments are sort of what you want to get out of this. So if the concern is that the dues now don't go to the sailing club, they go to the city, and the dues were being utilized for the liability insurance, I guess, what is the grievance and why is it important for the dues to go to the sailing club and not to the city? Does that kind of dovetail nicely with what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, the sailing club was set up to be at an arm's length relationship with the city from the liability standpoint. And so all the members signed liability waivers, and the city mandated that the club buy liability insurance, the same insurance that it insists on for all the other subcontractors. And as a nonprofit, that's pretty much all that the dues were used for. There was a little extra money every year. And one way or the other, it mostly went back to the boats. It didn't get spent on parties or anything. As to the grievance here, it's more like, why did the city, after 47 years, just all of a sudden decide that it was going to walk away from the Redondo Beach Sailing Club and set up its own sailing club? Why is the city setting up clubs for any sort of recreational activity? Are we going to see a tennis club next? Is the city going to take over Lanakila? Is the city going to set up a Redondo Beach Yacht Club? There's kind of a policy issue here, but mostly I was just irritated that it was done unilaterally, abruptly, and without any particular recourse, with the exception of trying to appeal it, which I'm doing through you, through the Harbor Commission, and through City Council. Now, in the course of doing homework on this particular grievance, I stumbled across two other things. One is that under the agreement with the Coastal Commission that was set up when the Portofino Marina was set up, there is a provision that's also reflected in the lease that says that 2 slips will be dedicated to a nonprofit sailing club. But the city recreation department sort of grabbed onto those slips, and I think that is in violation of the Coastal Commission agreement, which is not a good thing. So what I would like to get out of this from that standpoint is to have those slips assigned to the Redondo Beach Sailing Club. And if the city doesn't want to have anything to do with the Redondo Beach Sailing Club, then fine, we'll go off our merry way. But they have no right to those slips. And in fact, what they're using them for is they've got 2 dinghies just sitting there rotting away. Nothing's happening with them. It's just a total waste.
So perhaps the best thing to do here is for us to make a motion, or maybe, well, actually, sorry, we have 2 comments. One from Commissioner Escontrias.
Yes. What concerns me a bit is that obviously we have someone here who has an issue and a complaint about conduct, and I believe in some degree deserves some answers, more clarification. So I'm kind of curious to see whether or not that this can be revisited and somehow that it be kind of laid to rest as opposed to just kind of letting it fester for a long period of time. He does bring some valid concerns that concern me, and as well as the parties that are involved. But at the same time, there's also, again, as they say, there's 3 sides to every story. So that I think is wondering is that if this is something that the city or the council would entertain, that this gentleman goes back and gets his facts and again and addresses specific issues that are in error or that are misstated, and then come back with those so that we can either address those or not. I think this is something that generally does fall within, as they say, our wheelhouse. But I think it's going to take a lot longer of a real investigation into it to determine how this can be proceeding and hopefully, if nothing else, be more equitable with the facilities as well as how we treat the community.
Commissioner Lang?
I'm sorry. I did not lower my hand from the first.
Oh, no, that's fine. No worries.
Excuse me, Chair, we have one more public comment from Mark Hansen.
Oh, yes.
Let me put him through. Mark, you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mark Hansen, King Harbor boater. I've been boating in King Harbor for a little over 60 years. I served on the City Manager's Harbor Working Group. I currently serve on the working group for the Public Amenities Master Plan for King Harbor. One administrative note is it sounds like it could have been helpful tonight to have a staff member from the city who is directly familiar with the program. If you do a follow-up on this, as the Commissioner just recommended, you might want to try to get somebody over there to help with that. As I looked over the admin report, 4 things kind of jumped off the page at me. One, I had a question of, what's the value between the nonprofit run club and the city run club? The thing that occurred to me is, do you get some good free volunteer labor, when you have a nonprofit club? And I think Mr. Martin just touched on that. So thank you for those answers. Next up, I noticed that the centerboard boats, the 2 Catalina 14s, are no longer being used for instruction and aren't used in the club. So it begs the question, well, what are they used for? And I would suggest that small centerboard boats like that are the best boats for people who learn to sail in because they give you immediate feedback. So I think that's something that should be looked into. Also, I noted that only 3 of the boats are used by the club, 4 are not. And so I think there's a question there is, well, why aren't we using those other 4 boats in the club? Also, I understand we had about 30 members in the nonprofit club, 24 in the city club. I assume some of those are new members from the last year. And so the question is, how many did we lose in the transition? And should we be reaching back out to those folks? Because we hate to lose any sailors in the harbor. Anyway, those are my 4 questions that you might want to take a look at. And with the idea of, doing a follow-up meeting, sometimes when an issue is complex like this, other commissions will form a subcommittee of 3 commissioners to go out, take a look at everything in some detail, and then come back and report to the full commission. Hope those observations are helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Are there any other public participants?
Just Michael Martin and Mark Hansen.
Okay. Okay. Do any commissioners have any thoughts or questions on this or motions? Commissioner Mccauley.
Thanks, Chair. Kelly, so if I'm to get this clear, I just want to get it right in my head. These are 2 organizations that existed simultaneously? Is that right? For those years? It's like the last 20 years. One of them has been there 40 years, one been there 20 years. And they were running concurrently?
So there's only been one sailing club, which was the organization, the nonprofit group. Simultaneously, the city has been providing sailing classes and camps. That those classes and camps, once a participant successfully completed it, could then become a member of the private, I don't want to say private, that's not the proper word, but the nonprofit sailing club.
But when the members or when the people were going to the classes or trainings, were they being taught by the people with that organization, the club?
The classes were taught by city employees.
By city employees?
Yes.
Not with the club, okay.
Correct.
And I'm very curious to see what's going on here. I think these gentlemen have raised some valid issues that need to be clarified, at least from my perspective of understanding this report, which definitely, to me, just right off the bat, I would say if the city is, competing with a nonprofit that's been there for a long time, I think that's concerning for us. I wouldn't think that would be good city policy to do that. So I'd like to find out what's really going on there. So if we could have some staff come back and clarify, or I don't know about forming a committee just yet, but I would just like to try to get more information.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that this is going to go, just a little clarification on this. This is going to go to City Council before our next meeting, right?
That was the plan, was for this to go before the City Council at the November 16th meeting, which would be next week.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I'm not trying to, blow this off or put it on to someone else, but I just feel like these gentlemen are really not going to get the answers they need from our commission. I feel like this is something that, council has requested and really needs to handle. Perhaps, I suppose if you use this as like a dress rehearsal, the staff report on this is kind of missing. I don't know what's inaccurate or not inaccurate. I'm not saying anything's inaccurate, but it definitely doesn't encapsulate a lot of the controversy and a lot of the key issues that are sort of, happening. It just sort of like briefly touches on it. So for council's sake, it might benefit everybody, and just for the sake of time, to have a more robust report, or at least, so that they have more clarity on the controversy and what the grievances are, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. Do any other commissioners have any other, I don't really know what to do about this as far as we're concerned, if it's going to council.
Yeah, I think if it's going to council before we meet, I think we kind of wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know what bearing we're going to have on the issue at this point.
Right. I mean, I do think there needs to be a more robust report, just because this was very bare bones as far as, it is what the city sailing program is, and that's what we requested. But it doesn't sort of give us the information that we needed about the sailing club and then the kind of the issue at hand. So.
Excuse me, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, I would venture to go to this. If you believe that this report is just bare bones and kind of possibility is that there's items missing, then I think we need to bring that out and to indicate that that we have some concerns about that. My concern is that sometimes when reports and audits are done, that sometimes they're done in that way is just to push them through. I would venture to say that, and I'd be more than glad to make a motion, that we make a motion to the city council, and be most importantly to be heard on the fact that that some of us may or may not have concerns about this report, for one, and two, that request that they do a more thorough investigation or inquiries into this, to ensure that this isn't something that either one is going to continue in other aspects for other vendors when someone feels like if they're not following whatever rule, whatever person makes within staff, that suddenly they're just going to take over their vendors. So I think that if nothing else, again, because I'm a little concerned about city employees running a activity like that was previously done by a vendor that possibly could do it a lot less, because then we're pretty much short-staffed in the city anyway. And I don't know if they brought those people in, but I would be more comfortable that if we make a motion requesting that this report possibly is somewhat lacking, and that they hold off on any decisions that they make pending a more proper, thorough questions and answers that this gentleman has, for one, and two, any history that can be brought forward to either one, confirm or deny his concerns.
I mean, does somebody want to make a motion of that nature, or?
I'll do it.
Oh,
I think Kelly has her hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say that if the commission feels strongly that it would like to have a much broader discussion on this topic, and to that effect, be able to provide a little bit more information or a recommendation even to the council, we can have a motion that does request us to return at a later date, at an upcoming meeting, with more information that kind of delves into some of the topics that were brought up this evening. And in the meantime, we can look to see. I don't believe the council discussion of this is time sensitive. So if we can push that back so that we have time to bring this back to the commission, we can certainly do our best to do that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd like to see what commissioners, think about that. And if somebody wants to make a motion to that nature.
I'm more than glad to make a motion.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we request that the city council defer any, I would say, continuing discussion concerning the sailing program and club activities pending a further and more thorough report to be brought forward to this commission to determine the concerning issues of that program run by the city, if that kind of makes sense.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And then I think we can do a roll call on that.
Commissioner Escontrias?
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley?
Yes.
Commissioner Rowe?
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang?
Agreed.
And Chair Super?
Agreed. Okay. All right. Looks like we've covered that. And now we're going to move to J4, Director's Report.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few reports this evening. Just wanted to give you all a quick update. We have received a draft of the pickleball feasibility study. And so we are planning to bring that back to the commission in December. So, look for that on the upcoming agenda. Wanted to also just give the commission just a quick update that staff is working with the South Bay Parkland Conservancy to develop a licensing agreement for community garden in Alta Vista. So very exciting development in that area. So just wanted to let you all know of that project. We also have a kickoff meeting this upcoming Monday between staff and Spawn Ranch to discuss the skate park design for both Perry Park and Pad 10 on the pier. So that project is continuing to move forward. And we will continue to keep you all updated on any progress on that. And then just wanted to give you two quick updates on some upcoming events that are going to take place before our next meeting. We do have our Veterans Day tribute event, which is tomorrow on Veterans Day, November 11th. The event is at 1 p.m. at Veterans Park Memorial. And Mayor Bill Brand and other elected officials and military dignitaries will be at the event. And it's a really great event to honor all of the military personnel and to thank them for their service. So we hope the community will be able to attend that. And then looking into December, we have the Let It Snow Redondo event, which is provided by the Redondo Beach Police Department. That will be held on Saturday, December 4th from 1 to 5 at Seaside Lagoon. Our community services staff will be there providing the Santa's workshop, which will include craft stations for all ages. And there will be tons of snow at the event and admission is free. So again, we hope that the community comes out and supports that event. And that concludes all of the director's reports this evening that I have. So I'm happy to answer any questions if the commission has any.
Thank you. Commissioner Mccauley.
Thank you, Kelly, for the report. And I just have a question to refer to staff. One item. I'm learning about the Quimby Act, and I was curious as to the balance of our Quimby funds and what are they committed to funding for this year, and what things have we funded in the past, say, year with the Quimby funds, number one. And then I have a question, more of a point of order. on forming a subcommittee for the commission. I don't know if this is something I would want to add to our next agenda or if I could just bring it up now. But there's a topic close to my heart is dealing with the youth sports leagues in Redondo Beach. And I was hoping to form a subcommittee where we would be proactive and reach out to the youth sport boards and try to discuss with them. They're just kind of get a pulse of what's going on and see what issues that maybe need to be brought up to our commission that we can be helpful with the city. Because I never remember being on a board, they're not really too sure how to ask for help.
Yeah,
And,
this is a great idea.
I'm thinking if we reach out to them, I would volunteer to be on that committee. I know Commissioner Almeida, I think he's still on this commission, he's just absent tonight. I know he would be interested as well. And maybe others. I don't know how many people would need to be from this commission on a subcommittee, but I would propose that we form the subcommittee and then I can kind of organize offline meetings and then we can come back and report to the commission. I'd be willing to take that on. I don't know if we need a motion for that or what do you think?
Sure. So because that item, the creation of that subcommittee is not formally on the agenda, what we do have to do this tonight is take a vote. So we need a motion, a second, and a vote for us as staff to then agendize the creation of that subcommittee at the next meeting. And so then at that meeting, we would vote to develop or to create that group, excuse me.
Okay, so then I'd like to make a motion to get on the agenda for our next meeting to discuss forming a subcommittee to start a dialogue with youth sport boards in Redondo Beach.
Second.
Okay, great.
Okay, excuse me, can I ask a question on that?
I had a question too.
Yes.
Yeah, I spoke a while back to the mayor about that, understanding that, and I kind of brought it up before I became a commissioner. My concern would be is that why can't we just expand that subcommittee to all types of organizations that are nonprofits that work with the city? Because one of the things in working with the dog park, we rarely spoke to the city. And in fact, it was probably more adversarial for a long time. So I would say that we would probably expand that to all who care to organizations that work with the city that utilize parks and rec. And that way we have a better idea as to what their needs are. And if we can run interference, sometimes they have the city, meet their needs and such, so that we avoid any issues, say, for example, like the sailing club has, and we can kind of head things off. So I would say, why not just have it with all the organizations, or at least explore that anyway.
I would just narrow it down to all 501c3s that fall within the domain of Parks and Recreation.
That would be fine, because my understanding is that there was a little bit of an issue.
Dog park for sure, and other ones that I probably can't even think of, like even the gardening, things like that.
Right, because I understood that there was some issue a while back concerning the wilderness park, concerning the lack of an MOA, and now suddenly there's issues where the city's got to pay out a whole bunch of money, which could have been avoided, I believe, if we just have a lot more dialogue with the people that we service. I think I would like to extend that to all either 501c3s or I put it this way: it goes on the agenda for all those, and then the subcommittee can then narrow down as to who and how they want to include it, and then that way.
Yeah, we can amend the motion to include that now, and then we can discuss it next meeting.
That's what I would be open to as part of an issue to kind of take a look and say who are we helping and get the. Be able to, I think assist the city as well in knowing who's out there. I mean, one of the council persons I spoke to claimed he never knew that there was a 501c3 or Friends of the Dog Park. Never knew it.
Yeah.
Okay, and we got another one. So it's I think something we need to kind of know, because we have women that work for example at the Morel House every Tuesday, which I'm sure quite certainly that we can speak to them about what they do. And taking care of all the roses for the city. I mean,
okay, so let's just amend it then and then vote on it.
Before we amend it, Mara, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I just had a question if at next meeting, if it's on the agenda, will we have a discussion about what kind of like activities or that subcommittee is going to, or what kind of outreach that subcommittee is going to take?
I think the details would be discussed at that time. We would clarify. This is just to start the dialogue. It has no bearing on making the committee. It's we would talk about it at the next meeting and hopefully form the committee or in the next meeting.
Got it. Okay.
So then the motion would be that we put on the agenda for our next meeting discussion to discuss forming a subcommittee to address the needs of relevant 501c3 boards, relevant of the Parks and Rec Commission board, if that makes sense. Did I get that right, Kelly?
Yeah, that gives us enough direction to get that item on the next agenda. Thank you.
So that's the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and then should we vote?
Okay, Commissioner Escontrias,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
Agreed.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Agree.
Chair Super.
Agreed. So are there any questions about the director's report, or should we officially move along to item K, member items and referrals to staff?
I did one question I believe that Cameron was going to get to. This was concerning the community garden and its location and whether or not it conflicted with the proposed, two sides of this, to a proposed off-leash dog parkette at Alta Vista. I was curious to see whether or not that was addressed at all.
Yes, so there will be no conflict. They're not going to be next to each other or overlap at Alta Vista.
Okay, and the second question would be: is there any particular reason why the idea or the aspect of a parkette or dog park off-leash parkette was never brought to the Parks and Rec?
I can't speak to that, unfortunately. I can certainly follow up with Cameron and see if he has some information on that and report that back to the commission.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple things that I need to do as referrals here to staff. The first thing is I totally forgot during our election period that Commissioner Arata had been the liaison to the Historical Commission, but she's no longer on the commission. So that needs to be, someone else needs to take over as the liaison. But I don't necessarily think we need to elect that person. I think that person can just volunteer. Is that correct?
It is probably best for us to do the motion and go through the formal process.
Okay.
Certainly nominate themselves. If you'd like, we could always do that at the next meeting, though, if you'd like to have the full complement of the commission for that item.
Yeah, because we are missing a couple commissioners, so that might be the best thing to do. But I would like to make a motion to add a couple of things from the Historical Commission to next agenda. And those things would be, the first one is to request permission to allow the possible installation of historical murals to to a couple different parkette locations. So I want to bring Chair Morocco into bring him into the agenda for next meeting to come talk to us about that. So I'd like to make a motion to put that on the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. And then if we could just get a vote on that.
Commissioner Escontrias,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
Agreed.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed. Sorry, I had to unmute.
That's okay. Commissioner Lang
Agreed.
and Chair Super.
Agreed.
Chair, if I may, our next agenda is the, as I stated, the pickleball feasibility study was our plan to bring back. That's going to, we really want the commission to be able to really hone in and really discuss that item. So we didn't, we're planning to not have too much else on the agenda. I just want to make sure, is that discussion time sensitive? Can we possibly have that at the following meeting in January?
I don't think it's time sensitive.
Okay.
I don't believe it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Basically, I think we just need to narrow down a pool of locations. So I don't think it would even be too long of a topic, but it isn't time sensitive.
Okay.
So that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else? From I have one more, sorry. The other thing that I want to put on the radar, and it may be time sensitive, I'm not sure, is this has gone in front of the Planning Commission, but I feel like this should also be something that we discuss, is they're trying to make the 17 parking spots at the north end of Moonstone Park metered or rather pay, and they're currently free. And I just feel like that has gone before the Planning Commission and possibly one other commission. And I just feel like we might want to weigh in on that discussion. I don't know if you guys have ever utilized the parking over there, but I'm not either for or against it, but I just think that we might want to get a little bit more information and kind of look at the pros and cons of that and maybe weigh in on it. And again, I'm not sure whether or not that's time sensitive or not, because I don't know when that decision will be made. But maybe we could just look into that for next meeting.
Sure, if the commission would like to make that motion, we can certainly look into that and see what can be done as far as timing and bringing that back to the commission. Okay, great. Okay. So I guess I make a motion to just get more information on whether or not those 17 free, sort of remaining free parking spaces at Moonstone Park are going to remain free or be metered.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Escontrias,
Agreed.
Commissioner Mccauley,
Agreed.
Commissioner Rowe,
Agreed.
Commissioner Lang,
Agreed.
Commissioner Super.
Agreed. Okay, and that's it for my list. Does anyone have anything else, or are we good? I think we might be good. Nope, I don't see anyone with a hand. All right, everybody. Sorry for the long meeting, but I feel like it was productive. And Kelly, you did a great job. You had a great first meeting, or with us rather.
Agreed.
Okay, everyone. Well, the meeting is officially adjourned, and the next meeting, the next regular meeting of the Recreation and Parks Commission will be at 7 p.m. on December 8th on Zoom. Cool. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Appreciate
Bye, thank you.
Mara and Laura did a great job. I appreciate the detail. And thank you, Kate, for giving us energy. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, you guys take care.